want to show you what awareness looks like when you've been an NPC falling for the current thing for years. And you start to realize that the bullshit has flowed over you too, and you almost can't wash it off. I want you to watch what it looks like when he realizes that lefty-driven cancel culture, he doesn't mention it started on left, but it did. You remember cancel culture. Talk about masks, talk about COVID, talk about the 2020 election malfeasance. You were canceled. I was banned from YouTube for telling you cloth masks don't work. You look it up. Don't tell me like, go look it up yourself. I always bring the receipts. Cancel culture was a Soviet Stalin-esque movement to stop anyone from speaking about objective truth so that the government would let you know who the big boss was. And a lot of lefties who claimed to be about tolerance and coexistence showed they were full of shit, that it wasn't about coexistence at all. It was about subjugation.
Want to get it off your chest? You're in the right place. They accuse this show of being run by boobs. Well, let me tell you about us boobs. We're real and we're spectacular. Want politics and fun sprinkled with a lot of laughs? Heard in every state in the Union and 1,000 cities around the world. We just finished 17 years of broadcast excellence. Now in our 18th year, the Dave Weinbaum Show is streaming live all over the world.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is a little different for everybody, I'm sure. This is JP Maxwell, the producer of the Dave Weinbaum Show. Dave is not here this week. For those that may not be aware, Dave is on a rotation schedule now. He's going to be on every week or on every other week. And so as we've been doing for the last few weeks now, on the off weeks, we have a guest host, and that will be Mark McCloskey. He will not be joining us till 9 o'clock. So for this first hour, I'm going to carry on with the show. I'll be doing our typical interviews with JJ Bradshaw and Moshe Rothschild live from Israel here in just a few minutes. And then at 9 o'clock, Mark will come on. I'll be obviously working in the background, but Mark McCloskey will be hosting the show directly from his office in St. Louis, and he's lined up some other guests as well for us, including Larry C. Johnson, George Santos, and then we're also working on another really special guest for near the end of the show around 10:30 that has not been confirmed as of last night, so I'm not going to announce that unless Mark can officially confirm that, but it's definitely going to be a great show. We missed Dave on these weeks, but we got to carry on. On Tuesday, so the Bradshaw. I did want to jump and play another from Dan Bongino. I Phipps Dan show yesterday, and I just felt like the different things going on, or different things going in different areas that Dan were just really, really key. And so here's some more from Dan Bongino.
This is Tim Robbins on the Joe Rogan Show. Tim Robbins was Bull Durham, famous actor, Shawshank. He's been in a ton of movies. Goes on and on. Tim Robbins, pretty hard left guy, correct? This is what it looks like when the curtain parts and you're exposed sitting there like the emperor with no clothes. Listen to this.
It's the uptake on the vaccines in Romania, and they said something like 40%. I said, well, how do you explain that? And they said, well, we lived under the Soviet Union for many years, so we know how to look like we comply when we're not complying. And I said, what else reminds you of the Soviet Union? They said, without a doubt, cancel culture. I said, why? I said, well, Soviet Union used to keep files on all of us, right? So as long as you're a good party member, there wouldn't be a thing said.
Yeah.
But once you stepped out of line, they brought out that old file. Now that affair with your secretary from 30 years ago, it's going to ruin your life. They're going to ruin your family. They're going to kill your career. And they're going to make a big public display of it to show other people to stay in line. And they felt like cancel culture was basically operating in the same way as the Soviet Union did. And it was really interesting to see that in Eastern Europe.
All of a sudden, in the Bill Maher of the world, the Van Jones world, see it, you almost never. It happens occasionally. What's the guy? There was a guy out there, David something, I forget his name. Brock. Usually you see people on the right float to the left. It's very rare, but it happens. I'd argue like David French, another one. Like why? What motives? I don't know. Everybody's got an agenda. I just said that. But you see a whole shit ton of lefties who move over to the right. I'm not telling you Tim Robbins is a conservative at all. I'm just telling you, when they start to see that the right is about positions and longitudinal truths, chronological truths over time, and the left is all about bullshit and faith in an argument that has never worked, socialism, communism, it's a really brutal wake-up call. And we all have the potential for bad actions and evil in us, all of us. But a lot of us are just good folks, net present value good. We do more good than bad. We would hope. Imagine learning everything on your spreadsheet of good versus evil on the good ledger was all wrong. And was just not only not good, but was downright evil. I believe in communism, socialism, all this stuff. I'm the good guy. I want equity and equality and all this other shit. And then you find out that what you've supported actually does the opposite. It destroys people's lives. It leads to gulags, prisons, torture, poverty, famine, and has every single time it's been tried. Imagine what that looks like. Folks, I don't really get this criticism a lot, but it comes across occasionally that, man, you focus on this socialism stuff a lot. Folks, it is the battle of our time. I said yesterday on Jesse Waters' show on Fox, this right now, what you're living through, is the break glass moment.
And that was compliments of the Dan Bongino show. We're now going to go to our Second Amendment expert, our guns expert, and he's got a good shot, so make sure you stay on his good side. That is JJ Bradshaw. JJ, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, JP. This ought to be interesting. Instead of Dave and I having a conversation, you and I are fixing to have a conversation. So let's get started.
Absolutely. What's on your mind this morning?
Well, usually I hit the national stuff right off because that's important to me. But, we had a little election this last week, and I have a few comments I'd like to make about that.
It's all yours.
In particular, Amendments 4 and 5. Last week, we had a little conversation about 4 and 5, and at that time, let's just talk about the details of 4 to begin with. What our politicians asked us to do in Constitutional Amendment number 4 was to limit the initiative petitions that were brought forth by the populace of this state. In particular, if that had been made into law, into a constitutional amendment, we would have to have all 8 districts pass something, everyone, before it could become law. And let's say St. Louis decided they didn't like a particular piece of legislation in a constitutional amendment, they would vote no, and it would be shot down. Well, here's the issue with that. I kind of believe in that as at least intuitively, but the way that was written was terrible. It allowed the legislature to do what they've always been doing and limited the power of the citizens. That thing got shot down 78% no. And this is Republican, Democrat, and independents. Shot down in flames, as a matter of fact. Amendment 5 was even worse.
Yep.
Now, eliminating the state income tax and property taxes, I'm all for that. And at least in theory, this would have been a good piece of legislation, except it was written by lobbyists. This had the stink of lobbyists all over it. And our governor was very much behind this thing. Of course, he's bought and paid for anyway. But this thing would have, over 5 years, eliminated the state income tax and replaced that with something else yet to be determined by the legislature. This is, JP, this is our legislature saying, checks in the mail, trust me, I'll be happy to take care of your business and take your money.
This reminds me of Nancy Pelosi saying, hey, let's pass Obamacare so we can figure out what's in it.
Yes, we must pass it before we can read what's in it.
Yeah.
This was very much the same thing on a state level. And what it would have required is that the population of this state trust their legislators, trust their elected representatives. Boys, I don't trust you any further than I could throw you. Haven't trusted you in years because you're bought and paid for by the lobbyists. So much of that is out of state money. It stinks. So that got shot down. 82% voted no on that thing. And rightfully so. 4 and 5 were stinking pieces of legislation. Shame on our elected representatives for even bringing this stuff forward. The worst part of 5 was that, we've had the Hancock Amendment for some years in this state, which requires a balanced budget. And what that does is we tally up the state income and our expenditures cannot exceed that. Now, there is a little buffer in there, and as there should be, but this would have done an end run around Hancock. And frankly, I knew Mel Hancock, and he was doing the right thing when he put that thing into motion. And our legislators, who are spendthrifts and would spend every nickel that we have if they had the chance, were limited by Hancock. And this would have done a dance and an end run around Hancock. So, yeah, this was a stinking piece of legislation, and I'm glad it went down in flames. Kudos.
Two quick questions for you, JJ, in connection with those. One, are you shocked they were shot down, or by how hard they were shot down? That percentage you talked about, nearly 80% for both of them, which is almost unheard of. And number two, do you think the outcome could have been different if maybe the wording was different and it wasn't so confusing? Because like you said, it was full of lobbyist language. Maybe if it was a more simple plan and had more specifics, maybe this thing could have passed.
The answer to your first question is, was I a little bit surprised that it went down in flames? Yeah, the numbers were bigger than I would have expected. What that does is tell me that the voter in this state has read enough about this to recognize that it stinks. Good job, boys. Good job. It shows that you're actually going to the facts instead of listening to the spin. Number two on this thing, both of these were written in legalese. Now, I have read the text of the entirety of these both things, and I've read the executive summary, which appears on the ballot. And frankly, in the case of Amendment number 5, the two didn't even look like each other. JP, they look nothing like each other. So was this written in a fashion that would tend to mislead the voter? Yeah, I think so. And like I said, this had the stink of lobbyists all over it. If we're going to have a constitutional amendment, how about we have this constitutional amendment? No external money in elections shall flow into the state of Missouri from any other place. Elections should be funded entirely within this state. And if you attempt through a PAC or some other sleazy fashion to inject money in our elections and sway them, you'd be guilty of a felony and would be prosecuted. How's that? How's that for a constitutional amendment?
I'm for that 100%. And I feel like anybody that would be against that on either side, that shows their true color right there.
Doesn't it, though? Doesn't it? So that's my take on 4 and 5. They went down in flames. I'm glad they went down in flames. They were badly written and misleading. And Mike Kehoe, I didn't vote for you. I don't like you. Frankly, since you supported these stinking amendments 100%, perhaps you ought to go back and do a little soul searching and see why the populace of this state shot these down in flames. Perhaps you ought to get in touch with the folks that you claim to lead.
So, JJ, I was wondering if you can do a little posturing for me, because I saw some narrative on Facebook from some local people that I know that are liberal, and here were some of their. I'm going to kind of have to just kind of give the idea of what they said, not the specifics, but the idea was, what's confusing to me is this is a Republican governor in the state of Missouri here, a Republican majority in state Congress.
Yes.
And yet these amendments got overwhelmingly shot down by both sides. So their statement was that just proved Republican government doesn't work because you have a Republican governor, Republican-led Congress, and yet both sides said no to this. What would be your rebuttal on something like that? Because that language has been out there ever since Tuesday and the results came in.
Well, it isn't much of a rebuttal. Actually, it shows that the electorate's actually been reading the facts on this thing.
Right.
And let's face it, ours is a red state. It's Republican-led and has been for some time. But we govern badly. We do it badly on a state level. We do it badly on a national level. We at least know how to win an election, but we really don't represent the people very well. There's too much, particularly in the state of Missouri, there is too much external lobbying money and external lobbying power that is shoved into our legislature. And the average Joe like me, who has about $6 in his bank account, can't afford to buy these guys, even though they're bought fairly cheaply. So what's the answer to that? Well, it's fairly simple. You elect God-fearing, honest people, responsible people into government, and you term limit them so that they are not there for 15 years and become bought and paid for by external sources. So that's not exactly a rebuttal, JP. It's just a sad commentary on the state of politics. Then that's not just in the state of Missouri, that's any state. And the blue state's far worse than our little red state. So yeah, that's anyway, that's my griping about the state of Missouri for this morning. We'll go on to some national stuff because there is so much. Dave does 6, 7, 8 hours worth of prep for his 3-hour show.
Yep.
I do 20 minutes on this thing, and I've still got a couple hours invested in it because I want to come on here and at least act like I know what I'm talking about. So far, nobody's called me on it.
No, you're good.
So let's just start in Michigan. There's been a lot of network news about Michigan. The Democrat primary, a fellow named El Sayed, who is an Islamist and a Marxist, won over Haley Stevens by about 1%. And what's interesting about that is there was a third candidate in there that saw that she was probably not going to win, so she bailed out. And those votes probably would have swung this over to Haley Stevens. That 1% would have probably vanished. Now, El Sayed is endorsed by Bernie Sanders. That ought to tell you everything you need to know. Number one, I don't like his name. And number two, he's endorsed by Bernie. Bernie is a nut job. He's a Marxist, socialist, Trotskyist, you name it. Any nasty thing that has to do with communism, that's Bernie. So if you're endorsed by Bernie Sanders, you probably have the taint of Satan all over you. Sad. It's so sad. Now, what's going to be interesting is a fellow named Rogers is going to be up against El Sayed. Rogers be the Republican, El Sayed, the socialist Democrat, in November. There's enough bad press in Michigan about this guy that it makes me wonder, when it comes to the general election, the midterms, is he actually going to win? Are the socialists going to win in Michigan? The question there really is the mainstream Democrat on the street, the moderate, center-of-the-road Democrat, I hesitate to say it, but the John Kennedy kind of Democrat, is he going to take a look at El Sayed and say, nah, don't want that in my state, don't want that in my world, not voting for you? Well, the question is, are they going to turn Republican? Is a Democrat going to vote Republican in the state of Michigan in November? I don't know. I cannot predict that. But it's a curiosity to me that has me so interested. And ordinarily, I wouldn't give a hoot about what's going on in the state of Michigan. The place stinks. It's beautiful, but it stinks. But yeah, this one I'm going to follow because there's a hook at the end of this thing that might be very, very interesting. And yeah, I'll be one of the guys that follows this. See what kind of stuff we've got going on.
JJ, I don't know if you heard the clips I played, but I was listening to Dan Bongino's show yesterday, and I
heard
clipped out a couple things. And I mean, basically where he's going on about is like, this is the final front, is fighting the final turn of communism trying to come into this country. We already see tears of it kind of pouring in, but just the outright movement to it, we got to push against that. And that's where Dan said, this is the final front. We've got to do it, and we got to do it now.
Yeah, we do. You're a Christian. Do you believe we're in the end times?
I believe we are. Yep.
We are. So we're just witnessing this. In the end, we're just along for the ride. Let's talk about Rand Paul for a minute. Now, Rand Paul is a conservative nut job, okay? He's not quite to the level of a Carville, but he's working his way up there. He's a really smart guy. Don't like his hairdo very much, but okay, I'll live with it. What's unusual is Rand Paul in the committee. Let's see, which committee is it? Government Service Committee. Rand Paul interrogated for 3 hours Fauci, and Fauci cited the Fifth Amendment 111 times in that 3 hours. The argument has been made, and it was made by me a couple of weeks ago before he even testified, that if the blanket pardon that was given to him is valid, and it looks like we can't prove it to be invalid, so it's going to be valid. He no longer has a Fifth Amendment protection because he has been pardoned for his crimes. He's got a free pass, get out of jail free card. So he has, as of yesterday, has been declared in contempt of Congress. Now, years ago, and this contempt of Congress has been used again and again and again. And more times than not, DOJ refuses to prosecute. In this case, well, let's go back a little bit. In Joe Biden's DOJ, which was thoroughly corrupt, if you remember, Steve Bannon got prosecuted and convicted, and some others, some Trump supporters. So that precedent has been set. Whether our DOJ intends to pursue this or not, I guess we'll see. I'll keep watching and listening. But at least this has the potential to cause Fauci some trouble. Now, what's really interesting to me is Fauci's got about 30 minions that work for him during that time, including Birx, the other female doctor, and a whole bunch of staffers. And they did not get blanket pardons off of this thing. So their potential crimes can still be prosecutable. What will happen is, if this is pursued by DOJ, one or two of these folks is going to flop over and turn into a witness for the prosecution. Then that whole house of cards falls down. Now, is DOJ going to pursue this? I don't know. Fauci's got an awful lot of power, and power tends to shun prosecution. You either blackmail folks, or you buy them off, or you do whatever you have to do to avoid prosecution. So this has got a hook at the end of it that I think is very interesting, and I'll be following this one too because it interests me. This fellow, his actions at the tail end of the Biden administration, the beginning of the Trump administration, killed a whole lot of people. It wrecked the lives of a whole lot of children. Those crimes, while a little iffy and not well defined, are still clearly crimes. So you got to hold this guy responsible. How about his minions? This interests me too, JP. It's something I'm going to keep an eye on because I'm a law and order guy. I'm a justice guy. And there should be justice in this world for the powerful as well as the non-powerful.
I remember, JJ, when they announced the COVID vaccine, and I was already leery. I remember Fauci before COVID even came out saying, and he was emphatic, Trump will face an outbreak during his, like he knew it. So that I was already, my antlers were already on my antennas. When they came out and said, they announced what this thing was, they gave us the name and said, based on medical science, we're going to social distance, we're going to mask, we're going to do all this stuff because I am the science, and that's what science says to do. And my wife, who is conservative, but is not politically involved like I am, but she is a registered nurse of 20 years, looked at me and she goes, they're lying. That's not what medical science says at all. As a matter of fact, they're going against medical science by saying that. And I went,
yes,
uh-oh, we got a problem.
Yep. Natural immunity beats out all of that stuff.
Yep.
You get a slight exposure, you get an increase in antibodies, you're okay. And isolating yourself from that is a serious mistake. Fauci really stepped in it in two ways. Number one, he had a telephone from that era that he kept. Number two, he kept a diary. Now, if he had kept this diary in a little book in his sock drawer, they would have had to subpoena this thing. They would have had to do all kinds of jumping through hoops. Fauci really screwed the pooch on this because he kept that diary on a government server. If you put information on a government computer, it belongs to the government. You have no expectation of privacy. Well, they scarfed that thing up. They started reading it and said, wait a minute, what's coming out of your mouth is different than what you wrote down. Which one of these is valid? And I would suggest to you that the diary is what the guy actually was thinking. So, yeah, he stepped in it. And they're looking through his telephone right now because some of the notes on the telephone actually support what's in the diary. So
what do you think the likelihood, I know now he's been held officially in contempt of Congress for pleading the fifth over 100 times, 111, I think he said, to be precise. What do you think the likelihood is that Fauci actually gets some kind of punishment, or this actually gets some kind of legal issue for him, even if it comes down to the states getting involved?
Yeah, now this is another little hook in this thing, JP, that interests me. The question at a federal level is, will DOJ step in and take the risk of prosecuting this with the potential of losing it? Okay, there's no prosecutor that wants to initiate prosecution thinking that they might lose. So they try to have an airtight case. But the states now, Florida and some other states, have asked the Congress for this evidence so that they might pursue this on a state level. Now, that federal pardon that he got, that blanket pardon, has no effect on the states. So the states can pursue this at will, and I think some of the conservative states are likely to do that. Consider the damage that's been done. I don't know that you can even estimate the amount of damage. From my point of view, the children that were not allowed to go to school, the churches that were not allowed to hold services, how do you put a price tag on that? I don't know how that's done, but sounds to me like that's a mighty big number. So yeah, this guy needs to be held accountable, whether it's on the state or the federal level. I guess we'll sit back, pop a little bit of popcorn, get that Pepsi open, and the Congress would not pass a law banning this stuff. It was politically not very popular back then, but the Congress controls the purse strings. So what the Congress did was charge a fee. $200, which was a big pile of money back then. You have to register yourself and whatever you're going to buy, in this case, a suppressor, a short-barreled rifle, which includes Tommy guns, a short-barreled shotgun, all fall under the auspices of NFA. You pay a $200 fee. You get a separate background check beyond what is done on the 4437 form when you buy a gun. This is a big deal, okay? And it's been a thorn in the Second Amendment supporters' side for a lot of years because, frankly, a suppressor doesn't make a gun silent, but it certainly protects your hearing. And I would argue that that's a piece of safety equipment, not a firearm. But okay, the big, beautiful bill that Congress finally passed after giving birth to it, it got rid of that $200 fee. That fee went away. And as soon as it went away, the lawsuits started flying, because if that fee no longer exists, the whole thing will be shot down. I think likely the courts are going to pick that up a little piece at a time. But for Second Amendment proponents, this is a win, and we don't get many wins. Okay, let's talk about the local stuff, and I'll be gone.
No, that was great. Your great comment on that, and we'll get to some of the comments here in just a second. No, it's more of a, I guess, just kind of a comment. I just wanted to tell Bill Hardwick congratulations on his victory for Missouri State Senate. He's a regular guest on this show. He's co-host of this show, and in place of Dave, and also Don Mayhew, who has done the same. I think he ran a very good campaign, and he was second behind Bill, and made this a very, very close race. I feel like I can say very confidently that if either one of them were in that seat, I feel like it would have been in good hands. So we'll see what happens moving forward as Bill will begin. I don't remember who he's going to run against when it comes to the actual August election, but he definitely won the November election, but he won the primary. So we'll see how that works out, for Bill and for the future of Missouri. We definitely have some work to do for sure. I want to get to a couple of these comments here before we let JJ go. Kathy Safer Dillon, comment from YouTube. Good morning and happy Friday, which is a phrase that she coined, by the way.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy. And we got Patricia Oden Maxwell. I know her very well. JJ, I know you do as well. Sounding good, looking good. Go team. Another comment here. Hey, JJ, good to see you. Great to hear your info.
Pastor Pat, thank you for your friendship.
Well, JJ, thank you so much for continuing to be the opening act. Even though it had to be me that you talked to, you knocked it out of the park once again. We always appreciate your insight.
It was delightful, JP. I'll be talking with you again next Friday.
That's great. We're going to go and give a huge round of applause for JJ Bradshaw.
Thank you. Good day.
Good day, JJ. And with that, we're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we'll have Rabbi Moshe Rothschild calling in all the way from Israel right after the break.
Honey, what are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing?
It looks like you're filling up a swimming pool.
Yep, I'm filling up a swimming pool.
In our living room?
How else am I going to watch the game and stay cool?
If your AC is on the fritz, call Hartley's Climate Control. Hartley's is the area's best in HVAC repairs, installs, and maintenance. Knowledgeable, honest, and dependable. Serving Rolla and the surrounding areas for commercial or residential needs. Hartley's Climate Control. Community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word. But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our number one goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
At your locally owned Price Chopper, our standards are high because we know yours are. See for yourself what an incredible fresh selection of grocery items we have in store. Talk to our expert meat associates about what you're looking for. They're happy to meet any special requests like custom cuts, or see our expert produce associates on how to pick out the best fruits and vegetables. Quality in the deli means fresh, full flavor, and always delicious. If you're craving fresh baked goodness, we have that too. You can expect the best selection and the best value while interacting with our friendly and knowledgeable employees. You can find what you're looking for fast and easily at the best prices at Price Chopper. Fresh savings every day. Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Rob Willis, an author and a writer, and I write nature books. I live here in a ranch on the Ozarks and have published many books over 2 decades of writing. The Trout Adventure series of books was about traveling the world with a camera and a fly rod. The Last Buffalo in Kansas is a true story about one family's journey through 100 years of American history. A couple of years ago, I decided to write a children's nature series of books. 2 of those books have been published. The Adventures of Dog is a story about a puppy that grows up on a ranch in the Ozarks and has fabulous adventures. The Adventures of the Cats R Us Gang is about a group of cats that band together to protect the ranch from a dastardly group of raccoons. Wonderful stories for children, wholesome, about nature and the Ozarks. They're available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and in Walmart even. They're available locally at Reader's Depot. Hey, take a look at them. Thanks a lot.
Maybe it's for a kitchen you've always wanted. Maybe it's just to have a little extra room. Whatever the reason you're considering a new home loan, it's good to know that Town & Country Bank will guide you in the right direction. Our experienced local lenders are here to help you with a new home construction, remodeling projects, and fixed and adjustable rate home loans. You can even start the process online by clicking Online Mortgage Center at tcbanks.com. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
All right, we're back from the break, and we've got our next guest, Rabbi Moshe Rothschild, who, by the way, is the author of this book, Secrets of the Hebrew Bible, which we'll be talking about here shortly. He's calling us all the way, and he's live in Israel, so we're going to welcome Rabbi Moshe Rothschild. All right, as Dave would say, calm down now. We can't afford the overtime. Okay. So, Rabbi, I want to give you a chance just this morning before we get into a couple other things to dispel any rumors. Obviously, the mainstream media has their take on not just this war that the United States and Israel have taken on with Iran, but also you guys have a battle that started back October 7th, 2023. So we're coming up on 3 years here that you guys have been essentially in war when you guys were invaded back on October 7th. So the mainstream media has their way of presenting this information, and usually it always ends up being anti-Semitic. So I just want to give you a chance to counter some of that and bring some of the real information out that people may not be aware of.
Oh, wow. That's pretty open-ended question. I
guess what's the main thing you think that people need to know that the mainstream media is not being truthful about?
Look, I think the main thing that the world needs to know is actually quite simple, is that Israel is fighting a just and moral war on behalf of all of the world, of all of the good people, against the global threat of Islamic jihadism, which we saw this week in Michigan. You had a jihadi candidate win the Democratic nomination, and you had Mamdani win in New York, and Israel is holding back the tide of Islamic jihadism. And so that is, I think, one thing that the world does not realize, that this is not Israel's war. This is a war of the West, the war of those who stand for biblical values and goodness, fighting against those who would want to set up the whole world under a large caliphate and their Islamic law. And I think that's lost. And people argue over the details. How many people were killed? Is it a genocide? Is it not a genocide? Are they starving? That's not the issue. The point right now in the bigger picture is this larger battle that the whole world is facing. Yeah, now, I could get it. Sorry, JP. I could get into all the details of why it's not a genocide, why we are not starving. Why? Okay, but those, to me, we lose the bigger picture. Those are the trees in the forest.
No, totally agree. So just want to give you a chance to kind of speak on your organization here, because you've been on with Dave for probably coming up on 20 years before long. You started a great organization, Israel Alliance, that I feel like is, especially for this time, is key. But maybe not everybody that listens really understands what it's about. And also you've kind of pivoted to some other things and all that has really become key for you, involving the widows of some of the fallen IDF soldiers. I want to give a chance to speak on some of that and what you guys are doing, because this is really important work. Yeah.
Look, when I first met Dave, that's you're right. It is coming up, and it's not quite 20 years yet. It's probably closer to like 16 years or something like that, but it's getting close to 2 decades. And I felt that there was growing up in the States, there was a lack of connection and understanding between the Jewish community and the Christian community. And I'm not going to get into the reasons for that, but it just existed. And I felt that there was an opportunity, that there was an opening to try to heal old wounds and to build bridges focused on where we can find agreement, where we can find shared values, and not focused on where we differ. And that was the idea. And that's how Teach Israel was born, and later changed its name to the Global Israel Alliance, or even shortened to the Israel Alliance. But and it was meant to be people around the world who loved Israel, to give them an opportunity to learn about Israel. We still do educational things, a way for people to bless Israel. And we wanted to be sort of the go-to for all of that. We did free trips to Israel for pastors. We did a bunch of those. We did a lot of church tours. And we're really going full in on this idea of building bridges. October 7th changed the world. And I basically took the people who were with me, who believed in this mission, along for a new ride, so to speak. Or I should just say, it's in addition to what we were doing. And that is, the rubber hit the pavement, as they say, and we needed to now put into action all that we all are standing for together as Jews and as Christians. And that is to stand by the IDF, stand by Israel. And in particular, I had a son who served his full 3-year service in the IDF, of which most of that was in active combat in Lebanon or in Gaza. And so while I was not a soldier, I felt what I could do to support the soldiers was to galvanize this community of people we had, of Jews and Christians, in support of the soldiers who were killed, namely the ones who were married. And we started to help widows. At the same time, I still am doing a lot of educational things, and I'd like to keep expanding the mission, and that would include everything we have done till now and will continue to do in support of the widows. So that's why the name Israel Alliance. It's an alliance of people who are in support of Israel, and so that's where we are now. And my book, The Secrets of the Hebrew Bible, which you mentioned before, was an attempt also to bridge the two communities, the Christians and Jews, because in our love of the Bible, and so much is lost if you don't speak Hebrew. And so that was a way to try to show people the depth of the Bible for those who can't read Hebrew that you miss, and give you access to it through focusing on ideas that are discovered or quote unquote hidden within the Hebrew text. So that's, I know, a mouthful, but that's basically it.
No, and I want to understand more about the book because I'm going to take time to read it very soon. I feel like it's very important. When you brought this out, when you first released the book, I hadn't really thought about it in that context. And basically the explanation was you need to understand Hebrew, because if you read the direct text instead of relying on translation, somebody could be translating the words and they're not doing it with ill intent or anything like that, or to be vile. But there's going to be not maybe even some bias, but there could be some misinterpretation that then could begin to skew it a little bit. And so by reading the pure text, and it's in the natural state, you get more out of it than having to rely on the translations. And that's why it's important to understand the significance of some of these different things.
Right. That's definitely one part of it, of mistranslations that are made. And as you said, not from ill intent, but that's just the nature of translations. A translation is an interpretation. It's very hard to stick to the original. The other thing is that I think it's relational as well. What I mean by that is, imagine if you have a relationship with a spouse or with your children or with a good friend, and you weren't able to communicate directly, that you had to speak to them through a translator, right? Your wife speaks only Spanish and you speak only English. And every time you want to talk, you got to have a translator. And you don't know what that translator is saying. They may have good intent, but maybe they're not translating correctly. Maybe your wife isn't hearing it exactly as you said it, and it'll definitely put a damper on your relationship to a friend, to a wife, to kids, if you had to speak through a translator. So a relationship with God, if a lot of that is built on reading His Word, reading God's Word, then if you don't have access to reading it directly as communicated, then I think that also affects our relationship. So that's another point besides the idea of just knowing what it says correctly, but the idea of building a relationship based on direct communication.
So let's go and get to a couple of political things. I wanted to first just give you a chance to kind of talk more about your organization and also talk about your book, and we'll make sure everybody gets a chance to find out more information on both here near the end. But I was talking with JJ Bradshaw earlier, and this whole idea, and I was listening to Dan Bongino yesterday, and he's really on this push about communism and socialism trying to really stake claim in America. And I keep going back to thinking, and you dual citizenship, you're from New Jersey originally, in the New York area. So you know how some of this works. Mondani has been elected as, in his position, and we're beginning to see a huge turn in New York City, and it doesn't seem to be for the good. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are leaving. I think they realized very quickly, buyer's remorse. Oh my gosh, this is not what we signed up for. It has threads of communism and socialism all through it, and a lot of anti-Semitism, but yet there's a lot of Jews in that area that voted to support him. And even Dave has asked the question, and it's tough. Why do you think that still happens when I feel like it should be easy to see what these people are really about?
Right. Well, I mean, you have a lot of Jews in Congress, and you have Senator Sanders, and you have
Schumer,
people like Schumer, and so on and so forth, that are supporting and standing with Mamdani. And it's very, very difficult to understand. And it seems to me that you have Jews who do not hold Jewish values clearly or dearly, including support for Israel, and therefore their whole religion is communism or socialism, and it's been replaced what's real. I would turn the question around, as I've asked many Christians: why do you have Christians that support candidates who are for abortion? And the answer, I think, would be similar, is that, well, they're Christian in name only. Maybe they show up once a year on Easter or on Christmas, or they put up a tree and they give presents to their kids. But as far as deep Christian values of being against abortion, how do you have Catholics who stand for candidates that are that are pro-abortion.
Yep.
It's because people call themselves something doesn't mean they are something. And to use an analogy from sports, there are people that say they're a fan of a particular team, but they don't know a single player on the team,
Right?
And they don't know anything about it. So while they might declare themselves to be something, but it doesn't make them that. So that's what I would say.
And the thing too, I guess for me, is just looking at so many different things in the history that Israel, the Jewish people have gone through, but especially this was less than 100 years ago. Going back to the Holocaust with Adolf Hitler and everything that happened, it would seem like to me, if there was any hint of anything that was off with somebody, especially if they're going to be a leader of my area, a mayor, a governor, a representative, whatever, that had a sniff of it could be against my people, especially with the history that my people has gone through, that you wouldn't want any part of that. And it's just such a dangerous time, it feels like, especially for the people of the Jewish faith.
Right. It's true. I mean, look what happened in Michigan. It's incredible to me. And you heard the Republican candidate already said, how could it be that he himself, Rogers, who's the Republican candidate who fought, for America for so many years, and in a post 9/11 world is now facing a candidate who said America deserved 9/11.
Right.
And he said, since what has it been, 26 years, 27 years, and we have a candidate who can stand up and say that and win an election. It is incredible. People have very short memories, and we don't learn from history. And you are 100% right. I mean, what's going on, the wave of anti-Semitism in New York, I think the last month it's up like 30% or something. 70% of hate crimes in New York in the last month were against Jews, and those are against often the same Jews who voted for Mamdani.
Right.
I can't get my head around it. It's like there's like no logic. Doesn't make sense.
No, but you're right. The fact of looking back, that something that happened almost 100 years ago, and here in America, we're just not even barely a quarter of a century past 9/11, and yet what you said just happened, like right in front of our eyes. That somebody can make that kind of comment. That would have been heresy to do that, right after 9/11 or even 10, 15 years after. But now you're just 26 roughly years removed.
Right.
That statement, it helps him win an election. This is just absurd to me.
And that Mamdani can be elected, and that mosques are going up left and right in Texas, and it's really there is a long game here on behalf of the Islamic jihadis. There is a long game, and they're starting to make a lot of inroads. They are literally going to take over the Democratic Party, and you're going to have a lot of candidates. Look, even if this guy in Michigan loses in the general election against a Republican, but the fact that he's gotten this far, the fact that Mamdani was elected, it just beyond belief. It's beyond.
Now, I have a clip from Dan Bongino. He was talking about some of this, and this is kind of talking about how we're beginning to see some people in the left, finally their eyes are beginning to be enlightened to what's going on, and they're starting to shift. And he actually spoke about some of this in his show. And I wanted to play you this clip and let you comment before we wrap up.
This is not a fringe movement anymore. You've got people running for office with a podcast host out there talking about how he's not bothered by the savage, brutal rape during a terror attack of women. You're not bothered by it? Doesn't change anything for you? It pains me to ask this question, but what if that was your mom? God forbid. Or your sister? Oh, now it's personal. Can't say that. No, I can. God forbid it was. But would that change anything? Or is that ideology, that evil so strong in you that you can't look at the man in the mirror like a freaking Michael Jackson song or something? You can't even do that.
I mean, to me, that just spoke to it right there. And that's some same stuff that we've been talking about during this time this morning.
Right. It's no longer like some crazy fringe movement. It's taking over the mainstream and the Democratic Party. And, that's just how things work. You start saying the quiet parts out loud, and then you realize that, hey, there's a lot of people that believe this, that they're letting into the country, that they've let into the country over the last 10, 15 years. And and it's turning into a massive movement, and it's like if you could fast forward 100 years and see a picture, a snapshot of America, what it would look like.
Yep.
I'm not sure we'd be so happy about that. And some of the laws, in my opinion, that need to be passed are going to be very controversial if you want to save your country.
No, I fully agree. And I do wonder if this gentleman that made these comments about 9/11 and how they deserved it, if he had, part of me wants to think if he ran in New York for the same position, would he have had a different outcome? But man, at this point, I can't say that I know
Mamdani
a difference.
I mean,
I know. Yeah.
It's, I think when politicians calculate, they put their finger to the wind.
Yep.
And I think they know, and he doubled down,
Yep.
he's going to continue saying things against Israel, against Jews, and because if they know it's going to help them get elected, they're going to keep doing it. And if they think it's going to help them get elected, it means there's a lot of people out there that agree with that position.
And it also means that they can be potentially bought off or come off of a position 100%. If maybe the price is right. So, Rabbi, thanks so much for the time. And as always, where can everybody find your book and purchase that book?
They can go to the website, secretsofthehebrewbible.org, which is up on your screen, or they can go to our website, israelalliance.org, or facebook.com/Global Israel Alliance. We'd love to hear from you.
Rabbi, as always, thank you so much for the time, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you next week.
No joke, JP? No.
I'm fresh out of jokes. Dave took all mine. So
okay. All righty. Very good.
All right. Thanks, Rabbi.
Have a great weekend. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, so now we're going to go to the man of, well, I can't say just the man of the hour, the man of the next 2 hours, Mark McCloskey, who will be your guest host for the next 2 hours from 9 to 11. Mark, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to co-host or guest host or just be a ghost.
No, you're definitely the man, and I'm going to make sure that we got our first guest lined up here in just the next few minutes. I know you had a few comments that you wanted to make before we get our first guest on.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have on this first guest, and I'll introduce him when he gets on screen. But I think he'll offer a perspective that the typical viewers of this show probably haven't seen. But who knows? Because Dave puts up with me every week, even though he probably disagrees with 99% of what I have to say most of the time. So it's always fun, right? I always, a lot of people on the right end of the spectrum, as we say, don't do interviews with the leftist media. But I always like to do interviews with the leftist media. I like to know what the enemy is thinking, and I like to give them a little poke in the ribs from time to time.
Well, I think our first guest is here to get his poke in the rib, and that would be Larry Johnson. Let me go and get the screen switched around here. So, Larry, got you on with Mark. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I've been frequently poked.
Hey, Larry, how are you doing this morning?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I got to tell the audience that you are a fellow Missourian.
Yeah, I tell people I'm always from Missouri.
Yeah.
You'd say I'm from the wrong side of the state.
Well, I'm from still lousy Missouri, right? You're just from Independence, Missouri, the home of Soren Harry Truman, right?
Well, yeah, I'm old enough that he was still alive when I was going to middle school.
Wow.
My middle school was actually about 150 yards from his front door. So he lived just catty corner to the school, and have a living memory of seeing him walk in the streets with his fat bodyguard from Sugar Creek, Missouri, a cop named Mike Kelly.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Yeah, he had a Secret Service detail, but when he went out on the morning walks, they weren't with him. It was crazy.
Yeah.
What a different time.
Well, didn't he have a gangster who was offering him protection all those years?
Well, I don't know about that. He was directly involved with a political machine known as the Pendergast.
Yeah.
And then the sort of a subsidiary of the Pendergast machine was in Independence. They're called the Sermon Brothers. So they alternated. One would be mayor, and one, I guess I was like 13 years old before we first got some paved streets in my neighborhood. Up to that point, they used to put down a mixture of oil and gravel. And interestingly enough, the brother of the mayor, Bill Sermon, owned the oil and gravel business. Funny how those things work.
Yeah. Well, this show emanates from Rolla, Missouri, so we're going cross state all the way down to the other end. But just for the sake of the audience, Larry C. Johnson is a former CIA analyst, counterterrorism expert. You went to Mizzou, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. So
hooray, hurrah, Mizzou, Mizzou, you know.
And out of my two favorite commentators on the geopolitical scene, we've got Larry C. Johnson and Douglas McGregor, two geniuses on the perspective of what's happening in the world geopolitically. So, Larry, to start, this is Friday, so this is market manipulation time, right?
Yeah.
Do we have any news after? I know that the Iranian parliament was considering a legislation yesterday to ban Israeli and American vessels and anybody that supports Israel or America from the Persian Gulf. What's the current status of that?
Haven't seen anything as far as they haven't taken any formal action on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that goes through. They are, Iran's position on this has been consistent throughout. It's the United States that can't figure out what the hell it wants to do. 1 minute Trump's going to destroy all civilization, and then the next minute the Iranians are begging for a deal. And I can imagine the Iranians are sitting around in a room talking to each other. Did you call Trump? No. I didn't. Did you call Trump? No,
One of my favorite memes early on was Trump laying down on the psychiatrist's desk saying, the Iran has just called me and wants to deal. And the psychiatrist says, are the people you're talking to in the room right now?
Yeah. I mean, look, I voted for Trump twice, but I gotta say, I'm in sort of the Tucker Carlson camp as far as just disappointment goes.
Oh God, and you probably don't know this, but after our event, my wife and I went to work for the Trump campaign in 2020. Campaigned extensively around the country, and in fact, Patty and I were the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania for a while. We were the Team Trump bus touring Pennsylvania because that's where her family's from. To turn me against Trump, it took an awful lot. But I mean, when he decided to become the lapdog of Benjamin Netanyahu and force us into a war. 3 years ago, I was having a conversation with Douglas McGregor on my other radio program, talking about going to war with Iran and how ridiculous it would be for the United States to launch a campaign against a huge country of 93 million people with a large military and a modern military, and how self-defeating that might be. And the concept of just doing it because Israel wanted us to do it with no hope of success just boggled my mind, and here we are 6 months later.
Yeah, no, and it's been disastrous, not just for the United States in several regards, but it's also it's created a global economic crisis that is not currently being acknowledged, but it's there. I saw this morning, woke up and then news flash comes across from Wall Street. Gee, they expected there to be more jobs, and the number of jobs has fallen. But man, the stock market's going up, and I'm thinking, what a disconnect between reality, between what average people live. They find out, God, I'm paying more for gas. I'm paying probably $2 more per gas, or almost $1.50 more now than I was in January. I've got two Rottweilers, so I feed the dogs a raw food diet. So I've been buying hamburger. Well, a year ago I was buying hamburger at the BJ's, which is like Price Club or Costco, and I was paying $14.50 for a log of about 3 pounds of hamburger. Now I'm paying $22.
Yeah.
It's just.
The first thing I do every morning when I get up is I check the price of Brent crude, right? Between the Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea, that's about 30% of the world's oil supply. World eats about 100 million barrels a day. Straits of Hormuz worth about 20 in peacetime, about 10 in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
30% of the world's oil, and what's this down to in Straits of Hormuz, 5% at best of the peak or typical transit?
Yeah, it's very, very little coming out right now, and mid distillate. Now, and I'll use let me use a firearms example. you got a 44 Magnum revolver, and you got a 22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Now they're both guns, but that doesn't mean you can just put any ammunition in either one, because each one is built to handle a particular kind of ammunition. And that's how our refineries are. So the 70% of the refineries that are down along the Gulf Coast, Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, take your pick, they're set up to handle sour crude. Now, we in the United States, Trump would be bragging, hey, we are energy independent. Well, yes, we produce an abundance of sweet crude. But the problem is the sweet crude doesn't fit in the oil refineries that we have built. And as a result, we've got a global shortage of diesel and aviation fuel. And with each passing day, that shortage is growing worse. It's not getting better, because what comes out of the Persian Gulf is sour crude.
And you've got, and I'll just say this. I mean, like I say, I watch the price of oil every day. We now have been having a massive reduction in the amount of oil flowing out of the Persian Gulf for 6 months. Yeah. And the price of, future price of Brent hasn't gone up to $150 or $200 a barrel. It's stayed fairly flat. And yet you got countries like Japan, 95% of their oil comes out of the Persian Gulf. Their strategic reserves have been depleted. Our strategic reserves have been depleted. And yet the price has been remarkably flat. Explain that.
Market manipulation. There's this whole, I call it the hidden casino, the derivatives market. The derivatives market, and if anybody saw the movie The Big Short, it came out several years ago. It was about the 2008 crisis, and they explained the derivatives market of how I forget the name of the economist and the actress, but they're sitting at a blackjack table, and so he's betting her that she's going to win a hand. Well, then there are two people standing behind them, and those two people say, "You know what? I bet you that she's going to lose." And the other person says, "Okay, I'll take that bet." And then standing behind them are another couple. And they're saying, "You know that guy that just bet on that girl? Well, I'm going to bet that he's wrong." And then behind them is so this keeps building out. And with each layer you go out, the bets get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, right now, I think the last estimate I heard is the size of this market is $1 quadrillion. Wow. Now, that's a number I can't even wrap my mind around. But so there's so much money out there that's being manipulated, instead of I presume when you went to college you had to take economics 101. Actually, if you went to Missouri. My instructor, I remember to this day, a character, Pinckney Walker was his name. Can you imagine going through life as an economist named Pinckney Walker? But what you learned in that is that there's this thing called supply and demand, and that if you got a lot of apples, you're not going to be able to get a premium price for them. Whereas, man, if everybody wants an apple and you've only got 20, you're going to be able to get a good price. So, that basic concept. But now we're seeing in the oil market, that doesn't seem to apply. They've been able to, as you pointed out, draw from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to mitigate the actual shortages. But it's going to kick in. When it kicks in, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah. Well, and the price of fuel at the pump, price of gasoline at the pump has a long delay from the delivery of oil. And so that's going to, unfortunately, for those of us that still vote Republican, and I'll vote Tucker here if he gets his new party going. But those of us that vote Republican have the midterms coming up, and the real crunch in prices are going to happen coincidentally right about the time of the midterms in November. Yeah, and we're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that. I was in actually Chattanooga, Tennessee over the last weekend with Robert Barnes. Put on the 1776 conference, a fundraiser for his law firm, and the pollster Rick Barris was there, and And Rick, he got to go in and try to brief Trump about a month or two ago, just to try to warn him. He said, "Man, you got some problems coming up." But he said, and just some of the interactions he's had with people in the course of polling, he says the anger among former Trump supporters is so deep and visceral that he said I've never experienced anything like that. And I think for a lot of people it's a real sense of betrayal. We vote for somebody we think, hey, you're a good businessman, try to be fiscally responsible. You talk about bringing projects in under cost, and yet our debt, national debt, it's grown from 37 trillion to it's just shy of $40 trillion. I mean, $3 trillion in 18 months, that's just, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and Patty and I were out at the RNC's winter meeting in Santa Barbara this spring, and I was saying exactly this. I was saying, the kind of people that voted for me when I ran for the Senate, the kind of people that voted for Trump, never voted before, but came out because they thought that there was a real chance for real change. And those people feel totally betrayed. They will go back into their their houses, and they'll never come out and vote again because, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Or what did GW say? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Can't be fooled again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, I've mused aloud on this, if we're at an 1854 moment for the Republican Party. So back in 1854, the Whig Party, it was the opposition party to the Democrats. And the Whig Party got divided over one issue, which is slavery. And as a result, they split, and this one segment of that party became the Republican Party, and they attracted in Democrats that were also anti-slavery. And that's where, so the Republican Party was really born out of this anti-slavery movement. Well, the one issue I see right now that is comparable in terms of splitting the Republican Party is this notion that we have to have blind support for the Zionists in Israel. And I had a good conversation with an old friend last night who's Jewish, but he's not a Zionist, and he was really expressing grave concern about how this blind support for Israel is actually triggering a backlash against Jews, even the Jews who do not support the Zionist concept. Yeah. And so I think that it has the potential to split the Republican Party in a way that may not be recoverable.
Well, one of the things that I come from a very conservative Republican family. My mother was president of one of the largest Republican clubs in the country during the Reagan administration. My dad was a big anti-communist and member of the John Birch Society. And I kind of grew up thinking that America was a country out there that wore the white hat, that we were the good guys. Yeah. We were the people that stood for morality and principle and all those kinds of things. But then we joined forces with Israel. And all of a sudden, we're the country of luring people to negotiations to murder them, to murder themselves, murder the leaders, murder their families, murder their wives, murder their children. Country that kills 168 schoolgirls and won't apologize. Country that's bombing people all over. And all this started, by the way, do you remember the date that the Afghan war started?
You mean our entry into it?
Yeah.
Well, it was about 30 days after 9/11.
October the 7th. October the 7th.
Oh, was it October the 7th? Okay. Yeah.
Does that date mean something to you?
Yeah. Well, that's become the rallying cry.
Yeah.
For why we have to go in and blindly back Israel.
Yeah. So let's think about this, right? That was the first time. Well, you and I are both old enough to remember the social unrest caused by the Vietnam War.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we go into Afghanistan. George W. Bush gave the Taliban 10 days, 14 days to cough up Osama bin Laden, or we're going to go in and kill him. Right? They don't do it. They offered to cough up Osama bin Laden if we allowed him to be tried in a neutral country. Bush said, we don't need a trial. We don't need facts. We know he's guilty. Right? So we go over, we destroy the government of Afghanistan, take over the country. It took us 10 years to find Osama bin Laden, and then we murder him in Pakistan, which was an ally of ours.
Yeah.
And then we do the same thing in 2003, based on Colin Powell's lies and George W. Bush's lies about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, based on information coming from where, Larry?
Well, yeah, from Israel.
Yeah. We go and we kill 1 million people or so outright and cause the death of a couple of million more through starvation and disease. Does anybody go to jail?
Yeah, no. Well, one of and you may or may not know this, but we turned Saddam Hussein into this villain that he was the modern day Adolf Hitler. And I must confess that back when I moved from CIA in 1989 down to State Department. And my first day on the job at State Counterterrorism was October 1st, 1989. And it was the following summer that Saddam invaded Iraq. And so I really had I hadn't studied Middle East, that was not my focus or in terms of Saddam. Well, what I've learned now over the years is that after the Iranian students took over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in the summer of 1980, Jimmy Carter signed a finding, and that finding tasked the CIA to start working with Iraq and working with the other Gulf Arabs to counter Iran. And that was when Saddam decided, with our encouragement and then support, to attack Iran, start a war with Iran. And long about the second year into that war, we began providing Saddam with chemical weapons, or the chemical precursors that he used to make chemical weapons. So we were actually facilitating chemical weapon attacks. And people say, well, we didn't provide. Look, it's the same thing, based upon your legal experience, that if you provide a gun to somebody that commits a crime, you're called an accessory. Mm-hmm. And you just as we saw the father of that kid that shot up that school, was it in Georgia? Mm-hmm. He got 15 years in prison for buying his kid the gun. Yeah. So we supplied Saddam Hussein with these precursor chemicals. He launched over 20 chemical weapon attacks. And then we also came to discover, provided him with anthrax and biological weapons. And we were giving him intelligence. And I'm fortunate that I was good friends with an Army colonel, retired, named Pat Lang. So from 1980 to 1987, the CIA was providing Saddam Hussein with all this intelligence for about location of Iranian troops and to help their war effort. But then when it came Iran-Contra, and Saddam Hussein was furious that the United States had been double dealing him, that we'd been selling weapons to Iran. So he refused to deal with the CIA at that point, and instead he would only deal with the U.S. military. So Pat Lang, Pat had established the Arabic program at West Point, and he had been defense attaché in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. He spoke fluent Arabic. He was tasked with hand carrying that intelligence to Iraq, and did that for 2 years, along with a lieutenant colonel named Rick Francona. So that war ends in 1988. In late 1989, early 1990, Saddam was meeting regularly with the U.S. ambassador during this period. So we had a conversation. We had a relationship with the guy. And so he meets with April Glaspie, the ambassador to Iraq at the time, and is saying, hey, these damn Kuwaitis, they're stealing our oil. They're drilling in from the side. I'm going to go in and make them stop. Do you have a problem with that? And April's response was, well, the United States has no position on that. Saddam goes, okay. So he launches his attack on Kuwait, and we lose our minds. All of a sudden, Saddam is this great force of evil. At no time did anybody put on the the menu, hey, let's call Saddam up. Let's go sit down with him. Let's talk to him, because we've got this relationship. We can negotiate a way out of this without having to use our military muscle.
Yeah.
But this was the time when the Soviet Union was in the process of collapsing. And once the Soviet Union goes away, we lose our reason for all this defense spending. So by God, we needed a new enemy, and welcome to the club, Saddam Hussein.
The bottom line message is there's nothing more dangerous than trusting the United States.
Yeah, that was what Henry Kissinger said. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it's lethal to be its friend.
Yeah. And, when you look at the map, and I said this at the time, all the way back in 2001 when we attacked Afghanistan, and then they started building the lie that Iraq was in league with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and the threat to the United States. Well, look at a map. You got Afghanistan on the east. You've got Iraq on the west. The real target's what's in the middle, and that's Iran. And all this has been building. I mean, we have been, killing Muslims on behalf of Israel now since, from as long as I've been alive, just about. But this most recent adventure, and I'll ask you this question. I'll be 70 years old in December, but I've never seen a war that the United States have been in my lifetime where there's been an absolute absence of real information in mainstream media.
Yeah.
All you get is, you get the president up there who will say in the same sentence, we control the Straits of Hormuz, but if the Iranians don't release their control of the Straits of Hormuz, we'll destroy their civilization.
Yeah.
So it's open, but it's not open. Yeah.
I said, by the way, you're just a kid, man. I'm 71, heading for 72. So, we've got this Islamophobia in the United States, and it's fanned very much by the Zionist lobby. But because we always talk about I hear the people talk about Judeo-Christian values. Yet, when you compare Islam to Judaism, how does Islam view Jesus? So Islam says that Jesus is a prophet. Judaism, at least according to the Talmud, Jesus is boiling in a pot of excrement. He's not anybody to be dignified, or held in high regard.
Yeah.
The Islam has Mary, the mother of Jesus, as the most holy woman in Islam. And in fact, in Tehran, outside of there's an Armenian church, there's a subway station. That subway station is named after Mary, the mother of Jesus. Now, this is an Islamic country.
Yeah.
Whereas the Talmud, according to Judaism, Mary's a whore. So I'm just thinking, as a Christian, why do we align ourselves with a group of people, the Zionists, that literally hate the foundation and everything about Christianity, whereas the Muslims don't? And I mean, theologically don't. Now, there are some Muslims that are anti-Christian, and there's a lot of the myth is always built up and expanded about they're going to kill believers, etc. Except, like today in Tehran, one of the places we bombed is the oldest Jewish community in the world. It goes back to 500 BC. Think about that. When Jerusalem and Israel was conquered back by the Babylonians, and they were carried away into captivity, a number of them stuck around and said, "Oh, we're not going back. We're staying here." And they've lived in Tehran for literally more than 2,000 years, and yet we perpetuate this myth that the Shia Muslims that rule in Iran hate all Jews. No, they hate Zionism.
Yeah. Well, and I took a quick look back in history yesterday. to when Benjamin Netanyahu first started to claim that Iran needed to be conquered because of their threat to the West. His first speech in the Knesset in 1992, right?
Yeah.
And from then on, Iran's been 2 weeks from a nuclear weapon since 1992. And what happens when people in the United States government are charged with having the knowledge of the truth, like Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Kent? What happens when they report the truth that there was no Iranian nuclear program? They get fired, right?
Yeah.
And what happens? How many people in the United States Congress? There's 435 representatives and 100 senators. We got 535 members of Congress. How many of them aren't controlled by AIPAC money?
Yeah, a very, very, very small number, as Thomas Massey found out.
Yeah.
So you got to, in this case, you've got to bow before the lobby.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that our political systems become so twisted and so dependent in that regard on or allowed to be manipulated like this.
And they take control very quickly. The Missouri State Fair is starting next week, I guess. And a year ago, I'm there for the governor's ham breakfast, and I'm talking to a freshman congressman from Missouri. And I'm talking to him about what it's like to be new in Congress. And Patty's talking to his son. And the son's talking about how they just got back from their all-expense-paid trip to Israel, right? We're talking about some guy who's been in Congress now for less than 6 months. They put the hooks into you right stinking away.
Yeah.
And so, well, here's one of the things that, let me ask you this way. One of the first things that Pete Hegseth said as Secretary of War was that with regard to the Iranians, that we would show no mercy, no quarter. What do those words mean in military terms?
Yeah, well, it is against the sort of the code of military ethics that the United States is supposed to abide by. Now, I used to have, I had a blog prior to my sonar21.com site. I had a blog called No Quarter. And, no quarter means that you show no mercy. You show, you don't give an inch.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that, when I selected No Quarter, my idea was not to give an inch politically as far as standing on firm principles. But when it comes to the use of violence, you've got to distinguish between civilian and military. Civilian targets are not legitimate targets, and yet, unfortunately, in the United States, in our history of during the 20th century, we lost that distinction. Now, I mean, some would argue that perhaps we never, in terms of our treatment of the American Indians, that we never did have that distinction between military and civilian. But when you look at the number that we killed with bombs dropped over Germany and then over Japan, killing that many civilians, and we pay no heed to it. And that's why you and I are the generation when we grew up, the attack on Pearl Harbor was something that was still a vivid memory.
Mm-hmm.
And what was so galling about it is that we were in the midst of negotiations, supposedly peaceful negotiations. And in the midst of those negotiations, the Japanese decided to sucker punch us.
Yeah.
Well, we just did the same to Iran. But the difference is, in addition to that, we killed 168 little girls. And so we deliberately targeted a school. Now, I still believe, having worked with the military, that this was a classic mistake. But the point is, we killed those little girls. Now, if the Japanese, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, if they had bombed a school and killed 168 kids, our anger would have been even worse. All they did was they hit military targets. They did hit legitimate military targets.
Yeah. Well, think about what would happen if the Iranians, for example, had lured the president and his family into negotiations and then killed Trump, his daughter, his sons, and their children.
Yeah.
What would the United States do under those circumstances?
Oh yeah, we would be furious, and justifiably so.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where I like to try to apply the same standard. That and it goes back to the biblical teaching in the New Testament of you do to other people like you'd like to be done unto you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you start thinking about, well, let me change gears a little bit on this, because when we got into this war, the pretense was that we had to do it because Iran was 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon, despite the fact that a year previously the president said we had totally obliterated their nuclear program. So we had to obliterate it a second time, and then the war is going to take a couple of weeks and then a couple of months. But then we were going to require the unconditional surrender of Iran. Well, if you look at Gaza, maybe you understand why people would not want to surrender to Israel and become totally under their control. And the fact that the genocide in Gaza is now completely ignored by the mainstream media. And I'll bet you've seen Tucker Carlson's interview with Dr. Nick Maynard, the British surgeon that was stationed in Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, relating the atrocities and the tortures that were underdone, and luring children to aid stations so they could shoot them selectively. I mean, this is horrible stuff. And to say to the Iranians, you must engage in an unconditional surrender where we'll hand you over to those people. It's just, what are they going to do? What are their options?
Yeah. And what's so, the way it's presented is if all these Palestinians are Muslims, and as Tucker also has highlighted, there's still a strong Christian community among the Palestinians. In fact, they are the ones also being targeted and destroyed because, when I hear Bibi Netanyahu came out the other day and claimed that Israel was this great protector of Christianity. I mean, it was just a lie. The thing about Bibi, he doesn't even reach the broken clock standard, because at least the broken clock could be right twice a day. But man, with him, he's not right about anything.
Yeah. So let's switch gears to the current status of the little incursion that we have in Iran. The president kind of acknowledged yesterday or the day before that we have depleted our strategic munitions, although he says we've got an unlimited amount of some kinds of munitions, which I guess are dumb bombs being dropped from B-52s. But as far as interceptors go, that we're and our allies are essentially naked now, and we can't control the Straits of Hormuz militarily, and we have no ability to defend our allies in what I guess the rest of the world calls Western Asia and what we call the Middle East. And if Iran does what it claims it's going to do with Oman, which is control the Straits and charge a fee, and then also not permit Israeli or American or allied vessels through the Straits at all, what options does the United States have at this point?
Only one: negotiation. We militarily, we cannot open the Strait of Hormuz and get control of it without suffering casualties that, frankly, we're not willing to endure. So I don't want to say there's no military option, but it would be a prolonged, bloody fight. It would soak up resources that, frankly, we don't have. And I'm not a fan of Pete Hegseth at all. I think he's an incompetent. But with this Washington Post story saying that Trump was blaming him for this shortage of our long-range and middle-range precision missiles, it's really an unfair criticism directed at Hegseth, because this has been baked into the cake for years, just because of how our defense industry is set up to operate. And this is give you a statistic that I found shocking. 78% is the precise number. 78% of the weapons, the modern weapons that we employ on the battlefield or want to employ on battlefields, are dependent on 5 rare earth minerals. 2 of them one's gallium, another one is tungsten. Now, tungsten's not rare earth, but it gets lumped in there. And those are all controlled by China. So, even if we appropriate money and give a contract to Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or General Dynamics and say, okay, build this, they can't build it because they don't have those ingredients, because the Chinese are telling us, saying, wait a second, you want us to sell you these 5 rare earth minerals so you can build weapons and then attack us? No, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality. And they've exhausted these weapons. I wrote about this. People can check it out at sonar21.com on April 3rd of this year. I laid out that we were running out of the Patriot PAC-3 missile, and I didn't have secret information. Nobody from the inside gave me a heads up. It was a simple matter of, I started saying, I wonder how many, we're firing all these PAC-3s. How many do we have? And when I looked into it, at the end of 2025, so as of 8 months ago, we had a total of 4,420 had been built since 2015 total. And so then when you start doing the subtraction, I did at least get educated to do addition and subtraction. And you take out the ones that we've sold to foreign governments, about 1,500. You take the ones that we gave to Ukraine that they've chewed up over 1,000. The ones that we used up in the 12-day war a year ago, June. And then what we've used up now, we're probably down below the 500 mark, if that. I mean, we are literally running on fumes. And it's not a matter of, all we just got to do is turn the factory on and have them produce 24/7. No, that's not going to happen. It's just the combination is a supply chain shortage and just the complexity of the weapon. Yeah. And not to mention, each one comes in at the low cost of $4.5 million, maybe as much as $6 million a piece.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, well, let me give you a personal anecdote. When I was running for U.S. Senate, one of my opponents, who was a 10-year congressperson, during a forum with all the other Senate candidates, says that she just discovered that the United States is dependent on China for things like pharmaceuticals and rare earths, right? Been in Congress for 10 years. I mean, how can you not know that? How can the president pretend that he doesn't know that? And by the way, one of the things I think I saw on your website yesterday was that the nose cones of F-35s contain ballast because we can't build radars because the radars require gallium nitrate, which China controls.
Yeah. Gold's Gym's happy about this, though, because, the United States is going out and buying, weight plates, like the plates you put on a barbell. So we do about 60 pounds of those per nose cone. And, and it's just, so we're producing $100 million aircraft that doesn't even have a radar that can function. And yet we're calling that, these are ready to go. I mean, it's just, Mark, you couldn't, if you went out and pitched this as a story in Hollywood, let me tell you about how incompetent our government, they wouldn't believe you. They said, no, that's not believable.
So you go back and my analysis of all this goes back as long as I can remember. And there have been what I always call the powers that be that have sought to destroy Western culture and destroy our heritage and destroy the United States and create a single world socialist government. Everything that you can do to diminish the power and integrity of the United States has been done. And so I kind of get the impression, I had a law clerk one time that always started every phrase with, I kind of get the impression. But I kind of get the impression that the purpose of all this is to denigrate the United States, and that people like Pete Hegseth and I think President Trump and the people in the cabinet can't understand human beings that actually base their decisions on morality and principle.
Yeah.
The Iranians would rather fight to the last man than become slaves of Israel, because the people in our government are just opportunists. They will do what they can while it benefits them, and then they will shift their position if they need to be benefited by some other protocol. But they're not going to be Patrick Henry. They're not going to stand up in St. John's Church in 1775 and say, "Give me liberty or give me death." They say, "Give me PAC money or I won't win my election."
Yeah. No, it is. Growing up in Missouri, I think folks from Missouri end up having sort of a particular, good outlook on the world and how we, there's always a sense of being both practical and honorable, and there are other Missourians that have reflected those values, like General Omar Bradley from World War II, former Senator Jim Webb of Virginia, but he grew up in St. Joe, so I've become friends with his son, and I know the former senator from we had lunch together 20 years ago in a small setting, but there's sort of a practical decency about Missourians, and also we just don't like to take things at face value. As we say, show me. Don't just tell me, show me.
Yeah. And that was a Democrat, by the way, that said that.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Gosh, what's his name? Gosh, I'm slipping on it right now. But he was a Missouri. He was a congressman from Missouri, but he was a Democrat, I think. So it goes both ways. And of course, Truman had the plaque on his desk that said the buck stops here, right?
Yeah.
Well, the buck doesn't stop anywhere now. I mean, everybody has plausible deniability. And I say this all the time. If you have one extra beer and you get in your car and you accidentally kill somebody, you go to jail for the rest of your life. But if you're in politics, if you're the president, or if you're the secretary of war, you can kill as many people as you want, millions of people if you want to, even on absolute lies like the Iraq War. And nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets investigated. Billions of dollars, trillions of dollars disappear down the rat hole. Look at the money we've spent on Ukraine.
Right.
With no accountability, no auditing, people buying Lamborghinis and villas in Switzerland with American money, fighting a war which, if you listen to Fox TV, the Ukrainians can't lose. And if you listen to anybody else in the world, the Ukrainians can't win. And now they're defenseless. They have no interceptors left.
Yeah. And that's, I was mentioning at the outset how bad this has been for the United States, because one of the consequences is prior to 2022, even though the United States hadn't really won any wars, we got run out of Afghanistan, we'd failed in Iraq. There's still, the United States was viewed as the most potent military power in the world. That there's nothing we could do. Nobody could defeat us. And then, a year ago in May, we pulled out of the Red Sea after trying to stop the Houthis, trying to open up freedom of navigation, and they withstood two U.S. carrier task force, and they inflicted about $1 billion worth of damage on us, shooting down these MQ-9 Reapers, and then on top of that, knocking out 3 F-18 fighters, Generation 4 fighters. Then we come to this confrontation, this war. We start this war with Iran, and Iran not only fights us to a standstill, Iran has forced us out of our bases throughout Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, forced us basically to retreat to bases in Israel. Yeah. And so now the world looks around and realizes it's like that scene from The Wizard of Oz, and we're in the same cohort. The deal was in the 60s there'd be a special showing of that every year on television. You'd miss church to stay home and watch it. But that scene where Toto pulls back the curtain to reveal that the great Wizard of Oz is this old itinerant preacher, which may have had a little too much taste for the bottle. He was pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And that's what has happened now. The United States has been unveiled as, we thought we were the great powerful Oz. Now it's like, the United States has run out of missiles and it can't reproduce. It can't produce enough to keep itself in the fight.
And so here's a question that's been tugging at my brain for the last 6 weeks, or 6 months, I should say, rather, and that's Turkey. Israel has announced that Turkey is their next victim, and Turkey's got a huge, well-equipped modern army, and they were, a 12-hour march from Israel. My thought has been, maybe they're just sitting back there waiting until our allies in the Middle East have exhausted all their munitions, and then they'll walk in.
Well, another dimension to that. Israel is dependent upon Azerbaijani oil that is transited through Turkey, and Turkey delivers the oil. Yet Israel is talking about going to war with Turkey. And you're saying, if you're my main supplier of something, if you're my main supplier of something, I don't want to irritate and anger you. I want to be your sort of best friend so that you help me out. Instead, here's Israel antagonizing the Turks. But the problem for the Turks is Erdogan is corrupt. His family is profiting off of this. And, the old expression about money talks, and money talks in this instance. But yeah, this is if Erdogan goes, there is enough popular sentiment in Turkey that they are fed up with Israel, and Israel would be, as you rightly point out, Turkey is the second largest army in NATO. Now, we could argue that before February 2022, that Ukraine was the second largest army in terms of de facto, even though it wasn't a member of NATO. It really was considered part of NATO. But the Turks are a formidable force.
Yeah. Well, so
hey, Mark, I wanted to let you know that before our 10 o'clock guest, I need to get a commercial break in. So if we can wrap up in the next couple minutes.
Sure, absolutely. I always count on my producer to cut me off short. Hey, so just sum up, Larry. Where do we go from here? I mean, there's two doors, right? There's the president unleashing hell, as he likes to say, which would be self-defeating, and there's walking away with our tail between our legs. Is there any other alternative?
We can get out honorably. One thing that Trump could do is come out and apologize to Iran for killing those girls and offer compensation to the families. That would be a step in the right direction. That would be the start of, trying to seek forgiveness from the Iranian people for that. Look, we're going to be forced into a course of action, not militarily, but politically, because of the economic crisis that will descend upon us. I don't see that the world. Exactly right. I don't have the numbers right now to back me up on this, because there's always a delay. But the world right now is in recession. We've got a global recession. We're just not calling it that. But that recession could easily trip into a depression, and it's being held together right now with some feathers and glue, and it's pretty fragile. So I think that the economic situation that will then translate into political losses among the Republicans, it's going to create some pretty dramatic policy changes. And at that point, this desire, this intent on confronting and fighting Iran, that's going to go away.
And, if we consider China to be their one peer threat, what have we done in the last 6 months? We've exposed ourselves as being impotent, and we benefited China in just about every possible way.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, Larry, I appreciate you being on the program. It's a great honor, and I look forward to having you on again.
Hey, Mark, I appreciate the invite. Always happy to chat with you, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Take care.
Bye.
All right, Mark. Well, we're going to go and take a commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll have our 10 o'clock guest right on after that. So stick with us. We'll be right back here after the break.
With warmer temperatures right around the corner and allergies ramping up, now's the time to get those AC units serviced. At Hartley's, we pride ourselves in offering outstanding service with fast response times. With proper maintenance, you can make those hot days be a lot cooler and remove those pesky allergens that always seem to find their way into your home. Call us today so you can be living a much cooler and healthier life. Hartley's, community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word? But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our number one goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Busy schedule? Let your locally owned Price Chopper help you save time with online shopping. It's easy. Sign up to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app in the App Store or Google Play. Create an account and browse through the categories and choose the items you need. When you place your order, your personal shopper will get all of the items you've selected, taking the same care you would and following your notes. We offer free curbside pickup, so you don't even have to get out of your car. Start your online order today and no online shopping fee for a limited time. Go to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app to get started. Price Chopper. Fresher savings every day. Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Rob Willis, an author and writer, and I write nature books. I live here in a ranch on the Ozarks and have published many books over 2 decades of writing. The Proud Adventure series of books was about traveling the world with a camera and a fly rod. The Last Buffalo in Kansas is a true story about one family's journey through 100 years of American history. A couple of years ago, I decided to write a children's nature series of books. 2 of those books have been published. The Adventures of Dog is a story about a puppy that grows up on a ranch in the Ozarks and has fabulous adventures. The Adventures of the Cats R Us Gang is about a group of cats that band together to protect the ranch from a dastardly group of raccoons. Wonderful stories for children, wholesome, about nature and the Ozarks. They're available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and in Walmart even. They're available locally at Reader's Depot. Hey, take a look at them. Thanks a lot.
At Town and Country Bank, we are committed to providing exceptional service to our customers. We do more than just provide loans for our community. We help make dreams become reality. Whether it's a new home, farm, business, or a new car, we would love the opportunity to help. Stop by one of our 2 Rolla locations and let our friendly lending team remind you how special hometown banking can be. Smart, friendly solutions. Town and Country Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
All right, we are back on the program, and Mark, I know we have a guest at 10 o'clock that'll be on in just a couple of minutes, so you have a few minutes to talk about whatever you want to talk about before that.
All right. Well, the interesting thing about my life in the last 6 years is that since I started becoming involved in politics at the retail level, so to speak, and spending some time in D.C. and spending some time on the road with different Republicans and different Republican events, the old saying about sausage in politics is that if you like either one, you don't want to see how they're made. And the current vote in Missouri and primary on Tuesday on the constitutional amendments, Amendment 4 and 5, I was personally in favor of Amendment 4 because I think anything that makes it less easy to change the Constitution is a good thing for Missouri. But I was totally opposed to Amendment number 5 because it gave the legislature rather than the people the unconstrained power to tax, and then strangely enough put the state auditor in charge of adjusting taxes on the local level instead of the local governments. And so I've always opposed to centralized power. I'm opposed to centralized anything, including things like flock cameras and AI, where we're going to have universal surveillance, universal control, and the absolute extinction of anything called a right of privacy. There's no privacy right now. Your cell phone listens to you even when you think it's off. Your smart TVs pay attention to what you're doing. And I can tell you now, people will say I'm crazy, but I have now heard lots of people say what I have personally experienced. And that is, you can think about things and your cell phone will advertise those things to you subsequently. So it's a world where if you want to see the continuation of human beings on this planet, there are some things right now which even the promoters of which guarantee will more likely than not kill us, and that's AI. Even the promoters of AI claim that they will eliminate 50% of all white-collar jobs in the next 2 to 3 years. Where are those people going to work? Where are they going to eat? How are they going to pay their mortgages? But more than that, Elon Musk, 3 years ago, predicted that there would be the extinction of the human race based on AI. Well, recently he's revised that number. Now he says there's only a 20% risk that AI will cause the extermination of all human beings. Well, if you have a 5-shot pistol, like a Lady Wesson, like my wife carries, you put one bullet in it, spin the cylinder, you're going to put that to your head and pull the trigger? But that's what AI is. AI has a 1 in 5 chance, even based on the people that are trying to sell it to you, of killing us all. And if you had somebody break into your house and there was a 1 in 5 chance that they could kill you, you'd be justified in using lethal force to defend yourself. And yet there's nobody out in the streets. There's nobody out protesting. There's nobody out there saying, we need to preserve the world for human beings, not for a post-human environment. And yet the people like Sam Altman, people are totally happy with the concept of a non-human future. And people are totally happy with the concept of AI dominating our lives and human beings becoming merely slaves to the machine until the machines decide that we're too much of a nuisance and just cutting us off at the knees, just exterminating all of us. Think about what you would do if you wake up tomorrow morning, your water faucet doesn't produce water, your cell phone doesn't have a connection, your television doesn't turn on, your car after this year turns itself off when the government tells it to turn off, the grocery stores are out of food, and your neighborhood's on fire. What are you going to do, right? You can't do a damn thing. And that's what's going to happen if we don't all wake up right now. And as I was mentioning with Larry Johnson, back when he and I were kids during the Vietnam War, 1968, 1969, the streets were filled with protesters. Banks burned, colleges burned. There was a real revolution in this country against the war in Vietnam. and yet the risks of the Vietnam War towards the survival of this country and even the survival of Vietnam was much less than the risk that we're experiencing today. And yet we've all become sheep. We became sheep when, I used to say this when I was on the campaign trail. What was the purpose of COVID-19? Purpose of COVID-19 was to teach everybody the government could tell you to stay home. Don't go to work. Don't go to school. Don't go to church. Don't go to the hospital to see your parents die. Don't go to the hospital if you're a man to watch your own child get born. And everybody just did it. Everybody just stayed home. Everybody just laid down, even if it cost them their livelihood, even if it cost them their life savings, even if it cost them everything that they had worked their lives for. The vast majority of Americans just went, bah, bah, we'll do whatever the government says. What more proof could the powers that be have of how absolutely cowed the American people had become than the American people's response to COVID-19 and now to what's going on in the Middle East? It's time for people to wake up. It's time for people to seize this country back, to overthrow, as I always say, overthrow our Israeli overlords, overthrow our billionaire overlords, and overthrow our Epstein class government. And I wish I knew a formula to make that happen, but there's so much money out there, and there's so many people that are beholden to that money that I just don't see it happening.
Mark, if we can go back to the AI thing, I find your talk on that riveting because, I'm 42. Obviously, I use a lot of technology, but I'm among the ones that I'm a little bit concerned about the potential for AI. There's a lot of great things about it, like anything else, but there's a lot of potential disadvantages, misuses of that. And so, why do you think people are not more thinking about the potential when it comes to maybe the negative side of AI? Because when it comes to any kind of new technology like this, I'm always excited for the advancements, but I'm always kind of looking at the backside saying, how could this be used on a negative side though as well? Because I think we have to be aware of that.
Well, so I'm having lunch with the United States Congressman recently, and I'm having this conversation with him, and he says the same talking points as everybody else. Well, think about when we invented the plow, and all of a sudden, and tractors, and all of a sudden, horses became obsolete when we invented cars and airplanes and all this kind of stuff. I said, well, the difference is that you can turn your tractor off. You don't have to get on the airplane. You don't have to get in your car. You can turn your car off. Well, just as kind of a practical aside, every car built after this year is going to have a control mechanism in it where it will watch you, and your car will decide whether or not it, not you, thinks you're safe to drive. We've already ceded control over our ability to use motor vehicles to the motor vehicles themselves. Guest?
No, your Wi-Fi is kind of cutting out a little bit there, Mark. Okay. For the last couple of minutes, it was tending to freeze a little bit and then come back on.
Well, it's probably just the powers that be don't like what I'm saying. I'm sure it's the NSA.
It's actually been interesting at times how we've had different guests on talking about some very sensitive topics, and how it's been interesting at times that we'd have perfect service and then we'd have service interruptions all of a sudden. It has been definitely odd over the years how that has happened.
So I give this as an example. Last Christmas, Patty and I are putting up the Christmas tree, and I'm on a step stool putting lights on the tree. And I'm thinking, I'm not saying, and I'm not singing, but I'm thinking of an English pub band that I used to follow. And I'm thinking about a song from their first album, just thinking about it. I get down off the stepladder, open up my cell phone. What's the first thing that pops up? An ad for their first album. This is a band that 99% of the people in the United States, 99.99% would never have heard of, right? And yet I'm just thinking about it and it pops up on my cell phone. Never before, never again, right? Frightening stuff. But Elon is developing this Neuralink so he can implant a chip in your brain and so you can manipulate your computer by just thinking about it. Well, that's a two-way street. How long is it going to be until that manipulates you? And how long is it going to be until the future of the matrix becomes the reality of the present? And Vivek Ramaswamy the other day was talking to a college crowd, got hooted off the stage because he told these college kids, get over it, quit whining about AI. You're going to have to live with it, so just quit whining about it. Well, he's not going to do so well, I think, in Ohio after that. But I mean, They're all just telling us, sit down, shut up. You're not smart enough to know what the answer to this question. We don't have representative government. We have a power structure that will impose upon us its will, and they will do what they need to by the expenditure of money to get reelected. And I was out addressing the Montana Republican Party in June, and I was quoting Patrick Henry from 1775 at the St. John's Church in Richmond, like I just did with Larry. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. And I said to the Republicans in Montana, I said, and we're not asking you to sacrifice your lives. All I'm asking you to do is stand up for the truth at the risk of not getting reelected. I mean, this country is founded by people that risk their lives for freedom, and I can't even get anybody to risk their reelection for the truth. And that's a real problem.
Now, shifting gears here, Mark, you brought up COVID-19, and of course, Dr. Fauci back in the news, right, with his, his testimonies in front of Congress. I find this whole thing interesting, taking the oath over 100 times. And now this discussion about, with being an attorney, I was curious your position on this, if you know anything about this, when it comes to his pardon. There were some that said that actually since he was pardoned for any potential crimes by Joe Biden, whether that, there's some discussion about is that pardon even lawful or not, but let's assume that it is. He can't then plead the fifth. He has to then speak on those because he cannot be held accountable for those things because of the pardon. What's your position on that? Do you know anything about that?
Well, as Senator Rand Paul said, that even if he was still subject to prosecution for new lies, even if the pardon only applied retrospectively and did not give him immunity for future offenses, all he has to do is not lie. He doesn't go to jail. I mean, how hard is that, right? All you do is you tell the truth. The problem is, just as I was saying in the last segment, when you're at a certain level of power in this country, the law doesn't apply to you anymore. You can kill as many millions of people as you want to, and you walk scot-free. He was the highest paid public official in the country. He's now retired with the highest benefits package, retirement package of anybody in the history of the country. And he's responsible for the death of millions, maybe tens of millions around the world. The concept, just the insanity of the United States tax dollars being spent in China to engineer bioweapons is so hard to imagine that anybody would do that, and that anybody would ever vote for any politician again after learning that. If anybody would ever believe that this country is actually working in the best interest of its citizens after hearing that, it shocks me. I mean, I can't imagine. I've been saying for years now that as part of my typical presentation, I ask the audience, how many people here believe that there is a political solution to our current crisis? And in maybe hundreds now of presentations, one person has raised their hand. And when I repeated the question, it was obvious he didn't understand what he was responding to. But I mean, that's the problem. And I'll go one further. I think that they have spent, well, as long as I can remember now, and once again, I call it the powers that be, but it's the media and their politician lackeys, teaching Americans that there is a ruling class and they have every right to rule, and that people who are celebrities or billionaires or important politicians have a right to be superior to you, and you should worship that right and expect it. That's really what goes on now, that people don't expect that billionaires or celebrities or politicians should be subject to the same rules as you and I. We're peasants and they're overlords. And until that changes, until people believe that they actually should have rights and they should have the same rights as the president of the United States or, the policeman that pulls you over. We don't live in a democratic republic. We live in a totalitarian society where we're allowed to speak our minds as long as we agree with the power structure. And what did the president say yesterday? The president of the United States said that people that leaked the truth about our weapons status will be hunted down and given long prison sentences. Does that sound like a free country? That sound like maybe the Soviet Union or communist China, where if you tell the truth about the government will hunt you down and put you in prison for a long time? I mean, how can the president of the United States say that and not have there be just an immediate outcry for his removal?
So I want to go back to Fauci for a quick second, because there's in talking with the pardon and everything else. So now, if he's been found in contempt of Congress officially, I mean, to me, that's semantics at this point. I don't think that really does anything anymore. Back in the day, it was actually a big deal if somebody was found in contempt of Congress. To me, I think now it's kind of whatever. But do you think that there's any way, shape, or form that Fauci is justice is served at all in any kind of form whatsoever?
I don't think so. And if anybody were actually to require Anthony Fauci to tell the truth, I suspect he might find a way to commit suicide between the time that he was required to tell the truth and the time that he actually had to do it. I mean, look at Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, look at all the list of people who have died mysteriously right before they're about to testify in this country is enormous. I always ask people, do you believe that the president would kill people for a political advantage? And everybody says, oh, no, that's un-American. Well, every day the president is given a kill list, people that are alleged to be terrorists around the world. And oftentimes it's just some neighbor says, hey, I don't like my next door neighbor. I think he's a member of the Taliban, or I think he's a member of Al-Qaeda. I'll report him to the CIA. And the CIA says, oh, there's a terrorist here. We'll put him on the kill list for the president. We'll send a drone over to blow him away. Just like Venezuelan drug terrorist boats, right? What evidence do we ever have? First of all, we killed those people on the pretense that they were creating a fentanyl threat and contributing to the death of Americans due to fentanyl. Now, the fentanyl crisis is a huge crisis. More people die every year from fentanyl in this country than died during the entire Vietnam War. And yet that comes from Mexico through precursors made in China. But we're attacking Venezuela on the pretense of fentanyl. But then we're just murdering people out there in fishing boats with and refusing to disclose the information about why we thought they were narco-terrorists, whatever the hell that means. But it laid the foundation after killing a couple of hundred people in speedboats to give the president the foundation to go in there and kidnap the leaders of a foreign country. Just unprecedented type stuff. And so that we could steal their oil. I mean, and this is the first time in my lifetime where we have no pretense that we go into a foreign country, kidnap their leadership, and do so expressly so we could steal their natural resources. I mean, what kind of a country is that? Is that a country you're proud to be part of? It strains the credulity.
So it's a few minutes after 10. I don't see George joining us. I sent that information to his contacts, so I don't know if you want to. I can play a couple of different clips and maybe give you a chance to reach out to her.
Let me get a chance. Let me see if I can get him on the phone here.
Okay, you want me to play something, or you want me to hang tight?
No, just play something while I'm trying to get him on the phone.
I can do that. So we're going to play a couple of clips here. We'll do a couple of funny things and see if we can get our next guest on. So let's get that going real quick. And we'll play a couple of funny things, and I'll be right back.
Germs. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly running stories about all the latest infections, salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, and Americans they panic easily. So now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol.
3 fellows that went out of the building to get in their car and found they'd locked the keys in. They were locked out. And one of them said, get a wire coat hanger and we straighten it out and I can get the... The other one says, you can't do that. Somebody think we're stealing the car. And the third one said, well, we better do something pretty quick because it's raining, starting to rain and the top's down.
They came to General Secretary Gorbachev, and they told him there was a woman in the Kremlin. She wouldn't leave unless she could see him. So he said, well, bring her in. And they brought her in. And he said, old mother, what is it? What? She said, I have a question. He said, all right. She said, was communism invented by a politician or a scientist? Well, he said, a politician. She said, that explains it. The scientist would have tried it on mice first.
All right, we are back. Just playing a couple of funny things there. So
I got a hold of George. He says he's joining us here momentarily.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to have, well, I'll let you make the introduction and all that stuff, but while we wait, you can talk for a couple more minutes while we wait for our next guest.
Sure. And by the way, did you get that photograph that I wanted you to pop up when I've got George on?
Yes, I did.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So anyway, I feel like I'm out here flapping in the wind by myself because if you listen to Fox News, we're gonna blow the Democrats out of the water in the midterms because the Democrats are all crazy and they're all Democrat socialists now and the Democrat Party's in disarray and they're not raising any money. Well, the problem is that in the last election cycle, the Republicans didn't win the election. The independents won the election. The people that don't typically vote, the people that would not identify themselves by a political party, but believed that Donald Trump was our last clear chance to right decades of wrongs. They feel betrayed. They feel as if they've been lied to, as if the wool has been pulled over their eyes, but now they can see again. And you elect somebody to put America first, to not engage in foreign wars, and all you get is a guy who spends his entire time bragging about how many wars he's prevented, how many wars he's ended, and in the real world just keeping us embroiled in forever wars, depleting our treasure, depleting our military, and most unpleasantly right now, demonstrating that the United States is a paper tiger, that all we do is we talk, and we picked the wrong adversary. We fought a bunch of Stone Age tribesmen in Afghanistan and couldn't defeat them. We fought a much weaker military in Iraq, destroyed their central government, but could not control the country and had to walk away from that. The United States hasn't won a military conflict since World War II, and now we have exposed ourselves as incompetent and impotent, and that is the thing that frustrates me the most about the current administration. Not just that they betrayed the reasons why we voted for Trump, but that contrary to putting America first, he's now tarnished the reputation of America around the world. He's pushed more people into the circle of China, pushed more transactions into Chinese currency, weakened the petrodollar. We're at the risk of losing reserve currency status, which will make the United States just one more third world debtor nation. And all this because of why? To invade Iraq and kill their leader at the insistence of Benjamin Netanyahu. There's George.
How are you, my friend? I'm sorry. Just had a little technical difficulty here on my end. How are you, sir?
Not a problem. I'm glad to see you.
Glad to see you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is George Santos, former United States Congressman from Long Island, and now one of the greatest people that I know.
And I like telling the story of how we met. We met at a 2A event in DC, and then I think I took you and Patty to your first ever walkthrough to the Capitol.
Yeah. Hey, so, JP, pop up that picture. Hang on, I got your picture you like here.
That was Halloween of 2020. That will live in infamy. We, me and a fellow local candidate, dressed up in Halloween as you and Patricia. We had a great time with it. Lots of fun. And hey, I was actually giving people out shots of vodka out of that decanter, by the way.
Well, damn it, I wasn't even there. Oh God. Well, the great thing about you, George, is that you have suffered lawfare worse than most, and worse than a lot of the people that get more publicity on it. But the other thing about George Santos is he gives a hell of a party.
And thank you for always coming.
Well, I mean, it's all the cool kids, right? You got MTG there, you got Anna Paulina Luna. I mean, you got Kerry Lake, Scott Pressler. I mean, this is like the who's who of people you want to talk to in the Republican.
And you're also one of the cool kids. Are you kidding? So let's not forget that. Everybody's so excited when you come in the room. They're like, "Oh no way!" So it's always a great time.
Well, when just as an aside, when George was going to go to jail, Patty and I gave him a present, which was a copy of the Count of Monte Cristo, Papillon, a box of cake mix, and a hacksaw blade.
I will say this, and the cake box mix, the Betty Crocker cake box mix, essentially had a very, very thorough instruction from Patty. Add water and bake. It's so good. I actually have it somewhere in the house. I never baked the Betty Crocker cake because they kept it with the sticker. I think it's so cool. And you know, it's crazy. I read both books, and The Count of Monte Cristo, I was forced to read in French class in French when I was a kid. And it was like pulling teeth. So thank you for the English version of it.
Well, you know, in the like the Shawshank Redemption, they say put it in the educational, you know, pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the George Santos world these days.
You know, Mark, I've been focusing so much on walking a little bit away from politics and taking a breather. I've switched sides into entertainment, not politically. I'm still very much a Republican. I switched sides into like more entertainment stuff, and I'll explain to you why. I genuinely love President Trump. I owe him everything, right? Politics has become something so difficult to navigate that I spent a decade of my life navigating politics, and I ended up really, really badly burned. So I saw something at firsthand that Washington, D.C. is nothing but a theater, and it's all hokey pokey theater at that, because it's like nothing is real. Nothing is really accomplished. Everything is about platitudes and about giving people false hope, right? It's all a show. And I don't want to participate in that in any way or shape or form. If I'm going to go perform and do performative arts, I'm just going to embrace a theater kid that lives deep down inside of me and go do entertainment. That's why I just did for Fox Entertainment. I just did Special Forces season 5. I'm doing another project with Fox, and I'm very excited doing it because it's another side of me. I'm still 38 years old. I'm not young, but I still have a lot to offer in other aspects of life. But I wish everybody in politics well. I think we're right now I'm a little fatigued. I'm a little stressed. War and gas prices and all of this stuff is just like very demotivating for me to be engaged in discourse right now. So, you know, that's kind of how I'm taking it. I'm taking it day by day.
Yeah.
I commend you and the people who are literally out here doing quite literally God's work, like communicating and sharing and kind of parsing up the information so people can digest it. I did a lot of that, and I'm just at this point where I'm like, you know what? Someone else has to do it, and God bless you for doing it, Mark.
Well, appreciate it. Well, I mean, you're a prime example of what happens if
Mark was having some Wi-Fi issues earlier, George, so it looks like it's going in and out again. So if you want to continue on, and we'll wait and we'll get.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think I'll try to figure out what he's saying, but prime example that I would say for your listeners is a prime example of how you can go there and be a disruptor. And DC doesn't like disruptors. DC doesn't like people who kind of, you know, bend the game. Like, they're very focused on keeping the status quo very much alive, and as they like to keep the status quo alive, they do it at the expense of the American people, right? So look, I'm no choir boy. Like, I've made some very poor choices in my life, and I'm not one to sit here and think like, oh, you know, I did nothing wrong. No, I made some really poor choices, but none that warranted what I went through, none that warranted putting me and my family and quite literally the district of the 3rd Congressional District of New York through what they put us through. We lived through a very weaponized time of lawfare with Merrick Garland. And that weaponized lawfare was toxic. But it was toxic only in one direction, towards Republicans, because if you're a liberal Democrat, well, you got to pass. And we all saw this unravel, not to rant too much, but we saw this unravel with Sheila Shifless McCormick earlier this year, where she had to be forced to resign. The Biden DOJ on its way out gave her a sweetheart deal and said that her theft of $5 million of FEMA funds was literally an honest mistake done by the agency and by her company, and she was given 10 years to pay the money back, right? No harm, no foul. I was sentenced to prison for 7.5 years for literally straw donating $55,000 of my own money to my campaign. And then they charged me with aggravated identity theft and wire fraud, amongst a myriad of other stuff, right? So you sit here and you think like, wow, my offense level, like even with the DOJ compiling, as we all know, they pile on charges to make it look bigger. So, it scares you off and you don't mount a defense. They piled on all these stuff and said, oh, $325,000 was my total loss amount. That is laughable in comparison to $5 million. And yet she was getting it passed, and I had to go face 7.5 years of prison time because of an overzealous judge, quite literal rabid prosecutor. It's the world we live in, and it's those things that demotivate a lot of people from even wanting to run for office, especially as a conservative, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You see that difference there. So, you know what? I got to say, it's funny. Whenever people freeze on Wi-Fi, people freeze in the most awful way. Mark is actually frozen in a quite flatter. Oh, no, that changed. I've had some really bad freezes that I looked absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I don't know if Mark, are you back with us? I think he's still having some issues. So, George, in your experience with Congress, what is the bigger issue? Was especially at that time with the Department of Justice? Was it Garland as Attorney General? Was it the prosecuting attorneys?
Yeah, there
was
you
it
go. Back
federal
out,
judges?
Well, look, as far as Garland goes, Merrick Garland oversaw my prosecution directly, and which is unheard of for the Attorney General to go and sit and make decisions on the motion schedule of a sitting member of Congress, right? So this wild issue on separation of powers. But the most important thing is that it was just lopsided. It was like a deranged, absolutely crazy process, no due process. There was violations upon violations of Brady discovery. And the assistant U.S. attorney who came after me was this guy by the name of Ryan Harris. Now, he's like a Nepo baby, like born with a silver spoon, attended every elite private school you can think of his entire life.
Oh, there I am again.
There you are. Probably had everything handed down to him in his entire life, including the job he had. And he just made it personal. It was a personal vendetta for him. So I don't know, weird situation there. But I think the Justice Department under the watch of Todd Blanche has done a phenomenal job. And that's why I think he should be confirmed Attorney General on Saturday. And I think these senators need to stop with this self-aggrandizing nonsense and actually get the job done. The United States needs an attorney general. Todd Blanche is beyond qualified, but he is overqualified for the job, if anything, because the dude has a legal scholar career that is absolutely stunning. And we have all these self-aggrandizing senators.
Let's see, Mark, are you back with us?
I guess I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
All right. I can see you. I can't see George. There he is. Next time I freeze, I'll have to be in a worse position.
That pesky Wi-Fi of Mark is getting him.
Yep.
Your Wi-Fi doesn't like you right now. I think your Wi-Fi is controlled by the left, Mark.
Yeah, we actually told Mark and I were talking about this earlier, how we've got certain topics or guests we'll have on, and it's weird how sometimes everything's fine, and then suddenly we have service interruptions at the most inopportune times. And is that coincidence or not? Yeah, it may not be. So again,
trust me, I say this. I'm sorry. It's probably my fault. My NSA agent is probably listening, and he's not happy with the conversation.
We've had that same joke before. I'm sure we're on a list somewhere, and they don't.
I'm sure I'm on some Gestapo list.
Right. But going back to that, did you have any direct conversations with Merrick Garland during this whole process, or was he just overseeing the case and that was it? Really curious about it. I think he was very corrupt.
We didn't. He's very corrupt. I mean, I will say this. God bless Mitch McConnell, whatever his state is. That was one remarkable feat, barring and blocking that absolute egomaniac from becoming a United States Supreme Court justice. But as far as interactions, we had no direct interactions, but every single communication that my lawyers had with the AUSAs, which are the assistant U.S. attorneys, would be in the notion of, all right, we have to bounce this all the way up to the AG and we'll let you know. Even down to when we decided to take a plea deal, because we saw that, I had to spend a couple of $100,000 more, and I had already spent so much. And at that point, I was just doing like, you know what, we're going to go to trial. I'm going to get lambasted regardless, because the court of public opinion was so poorly against me. And then I got expelled. And then I said, look, this is not good for me at this point. Getting expelled was what led me to taking the plea a couple of months later. So no, we never interacted with him, but the facts of how his office was, behaving, and how he was instructing his U.S. attorney and assistant U.S. attorneys to behave tells you everything you need to know of what kind of culture the DOJ had. It was one of threats, and more threats. It like layered, stacked.
And the prosecution is a punishment in a lot of cases, because the average person just can't afford to put up the defense necessary. And I mean, just like with the vast majority of my J6 defendants, for example, they can't spend $100,000 on a lawyer, and they're being threatened with life in prison if they don't confess to misdemeanors. And so what are you going to do if you're an ordinary American citizen? I mean,
well, yeah, because justice in this country, unfortunately, Mark, it's not about how much justice you're afforded. It's how much justice you can afford financially. How many lawyers can you pay? How big of a white shoe law firm can you retain? Are you going to go and retain Sullivan and Cromwell or Mayor Brown, or like these are the real issues. Is unfortunately, it's about how much money you can put out there and shell out to defend yourself, because the government has infinite resources and they come down on you hard. It's lines of paralegals upon lines of junior attorneys upon lines of AUSAs, and then a U.S. attorney on top of that. And then in my case, I had the attorney general on it. So it's wild. Absolutely wild.
Once the power structure decides to burn you, you're going to get burned no matter what. And
that's why they say, I think you learned this in law school, right, Mark? You can indict a ham sandwich.
Exactly. Unless it's James Comey, right? In which case you can't indict that ham sandwich.
No. It's just some people are Teflon. I'm telling you, it's quite nice to see that some people are Teflon in all the wrong ways. But yeah, James Comey is like Teflon Comey. You can't get an indictment to stick on him.
Yeah, well, maybe it's because he's so tall, everything goes under his head. Who knows?
So good.
Oh gosh. Well, and the list of people that get excluded because they don't go along with a fraud, right? With a charade, like yourself and MTG and Tom Massey and Madison Cawthorn. I mean, telling what's actually going on. And now there's the rumors about Byron Daniels and Corey Mills. And if they pollute the public opinion to where no matter what the facts are, you're going to get burned regardless. I mean, nobody cares about the facts because there's too much propaganda.
And not just propaganda. Then there's also this issue that we have with media today. Media has lost its sense. They're no longer about reporting the truth. They're about who can report fastest. And then if corrections need to be made, so be it. So they're more about who's first rather than who's right. And that standard change is absolutely detrimental to the existence of this country. When the media loses its ability to be honest and truthful, and all they focus now is about clicks and likes and views for their, monetization purposes, we're in trouble, my friend. We're in deep, as I like to say here at home with my niece, we're in deep doo-doo. It's not good. Oh, there goes Mark again.
I'm concerned we lost Mark
again. So,
for anybody who has an interest in getting into politics, especially looking at maybe getting to the United States side where you're in DC trying to battle it out with all the elites and everybody else, what would be, kind of just based on your experience, some kind of insider wisdom as they begin to think about something like that?
Don't do it.
I had a feeling that might be your response. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I always tell people, I get a lot of people asking me like, George, I really want to get involved in politics. I want to run for Congress. My answer is don't do it. It's not worth it. It's really, do you like your life? Do you like privacy? Do you like being able to walk around and nobody even know who you are? I love wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, and I don't get to do that often because, God forbid, paparazzis are going to take pictures of you or whatever the case is. And then you look like a schlep, and then they're like, look at him. He's let go. Look at him. He's fallen so far from grace that he's now like a bum or whatever the case is. So it's like everything becomes so much more amplified in your life. Your family loses privacies. If you have kids, really consider the repercussions your kids are going to suffer, especially if you're running as a Republican conservative with actual true conservative values, because then it's actually more enhanced, right? Democrats get a little bit of a pass, but kind of the rule of the scrutiny is all across the board. So I tell people, don't do it. It's just not worth it. You have a nice life. Go live your life. Don't do it.
Story,
and it's sad.
Called in mine that was in the Reagan cabinet, and I said, "What do you think about the concept of me running for U.S. Senate?" He said, "Go outside, drive some nails through your feet. It'll feel better, and it won't take us."
Yeah, and it won't cost you anything, because if there's anything I've learned, it's you don't only pay a financial price, you pay a price of privacy, and that is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Gold. Privacy is something that we barely have in this country, right? That's a veil of it's a fake concept. There's no real privacy in America. Everything is public record. But when you really put yourself in the spotlight, you lose your privacy, and then you start weighing the worth of privacy, and the weight's worth in gold. It's just sad.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, I was going to tell you, since you're having Wi-Fi issues, if you want to call my cell number, I can patch you in on the phone if you want to do that for the audio.
Let's see. Actually, I probably should, because I phase in and out here. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me get the phone number. Hang on.
You just call mine directly. I know you have that since we were texting back and forth preparing for the show. But so, George, your recommendation is for people for them not to get involved in politics. So let me, I guess, kind of be, let me take the other side of it. Somebody that's really passionate, I want to do something good for my country. I want to be a benefit to society and for the greater good. So what would you recommend to them that maybe they could do then, if it's not maybe at the national level?
Get civically engaged locally. Go be a town councilman. Go be a county commissioner. Go do local things in your state, in your town, in your municipality. Get involved with the zoning board. I mean, these things matter so much. A lot of people are up in arms about data centers, right? I actually, on the opposite side of that, I do support data centers for a myriad of reasons, but I'm going to go and take the side of the people who are not supporting, right, data centers, who are concerned about health or resources. A simple participation on the zoning board would change everything for you. If you can join the zoning board of your local municipality, you can stop something like a data center, believe it or not. So there's so many more powerful local political opportunities you can do. And I say this to say all politics is local. Don't ignore the flashy DC spotlight. Sure, you won't get booked on Sean Hannity or Caitlin Collins or Jake Tapper or Laura Ingraham or Rob Finnerty and Rob Schmidt, but at least you're actually going to do something that matters.
Yeah, and it'll still cost you your fortune and your reputation and your privacy if they decide to burn you. And the one thing that I have discovered in politics is the party decides who's going to win before the primary happens. There's a chosen candidate that gets the funding, gets the publicity, gets the endorsements, and if you're not controllable by the party, you're going to end up going to jail.
Not fun. And I'll say this. Look, another example of that is if you pay attention to what just happened last night, Andy Ogles, a sitting incumbent member of Congress, just lost his primary in Tennessee. It's quite inexplicable. And I think a big part of that was there was a dark money pack of never Trumpers who propped up a guy, called him MAGA. And even with the Trump endorsement, the voluminous amount of spending was so outrageous that he took out Andy Ogles. So this is what we're dealing with.
it's political warfare out there right now. Absolutely crazy. So why put yourself through this? Why go and run for office when it's so lopsided? We have so many things we need to fix. Citizens United is one of them that I think we have to fix. It's a ill-fated decision done by the Supreme Court. And I will continue to say that. I don't care. Free speech doesn't mean you get to buy speech. And that's always been my defense to that. And Citizens United has destroyed campaigning and politics in this country, because you get all these dark money PACs and super PACs, and most of the money is laundered in through foreign freaking adversaries meddling in our elections, and people are turning a blind eye to it. Like they really are. Look at this scandal unraveling now with Act Blue, the Democrats' main fundraising arm mechanism. I mean, their president pled the fifth to simple, basic questions on a House Oversight Committee hearing. So, you know, there's a lot to be said about why not to run for office.
Yeah. Well, you know, the story I always tell is that I used to have this cartoon up on the wall in my office where the dad's talking to his school-age daughter and says, "Who does a congressman work for?" And she says, "The people." Then he says, "Well, let me rephrase the question. Let's assume you're auditioning for a job for 2 years. It pays $174,000 a year. It costs you $20 million to get that job. Now, who does a congressman work for?" She says, "The highest bidder." And, you know, that's really the way it is these days. And when you're talking about Citizens United, where the Supreme Court says they can limit what you and I can donate to a candidate, but a PAC or a corporation can donate an unlimited amount. I mean, that's the opposite of freedom of speech. That's the opposite of what the founders thought
paid speech.
Ought to be in control.
That's purchasing speech and propagandizing to the masses. Because I'm going to use this example. I am so happy, by the way, for you, because Cori Bush, your former congresswoman, also the trespasser who invaded your property, got shown the door again. She doesn't get tired of being humiliated. I will say this: the way she was taken out, sure, I appreciate her being taken out for multiple reasons, but the way she was taken out was by AIPAC spending tens of millions of dollars against her. And I guess it's paying dividends, you know? So
yeah,
we can't just dislike it when it affects the people we like. We have to also acknowledge when it affects people we don't like. And I think it's a great example for Citizens United is Cori Bush too. So, I mean, although I'm so happy she got humiliated this time around. What was it, 70-25? What a shellacking. Her behind must be still glowing from the whooping she got from the people. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah. Well, you know, I kind of wish she'd gotten elected. I always said that every time she opens her mouth, she's so stupid, we get 150,000 new Republican voters.
Well, we have AOC doing that. That's okay.
Yeah, we got AOC doing that. Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, put in a plug for your Fox Digital show.
Yeah, no, it's not digital. It's actually on Fox, on I guess in New York's Channel 5, Fox 5, all around the country. You guys figure it out. It's not a Fox News show. It's Fox Entertainment, the big times. Mark, come on, give me some credit here. But yeah, the premiere is September 24th on Fox Channel, whichever carrier you have. I know in New York, for example, it's Fox 5. And you're going to see this, you know, chunky monkey here doing some pretty exciting things in the middle of the Malaysian jungle. And I will say this: if you don't know what a mangrove is, I strongly suggest you go look it up, because you're going to see a lot of it. And it's intense. When you're being trained by drill sergeants, it is not fun. And it is very humbling. Very, very humbling. And I can't wait to entertain you guys. Like, there's a lot of aspects of this that is going to be somewhat humiliating, but in a humbling way. And I'm totally okay with that. I just had so much fun doing it. So I think it's going to show a different side of me that I hope people learn a little bit more about me, instead of just listening to whatever tabloid news media spent years trying to shape who I am, instead of getting to know who I am. So, and again, you can always follow me at George Santos on X, where it's my main platform, or you can find me at George Santos NY on Instagram. And those are the only really two platforms I kind of lurk around, and I'm out there giving my opinion, giving my 2 cents, and always happy to be there with you guys and having some fun. And again, always a pleasure being here with you guys, and Mark, always a pleasure talking to you, my friend. Thank you for having me.
I'll tell the listening public some things they probably don't know about George Santos. You're a history buff. When you were kind enough to take Patty and me through the Capitol building, you pointed out the painting of George Washington in the House chambers, where they had painted out his sword because it was too offensive looking to have the father of our nation leaning on his sword, and also that the only congressman in the House that had actually had a bullet in him has a bullet through his desk.
Yep, that's true.
Tell that story. That's kind of interesting.
So in the revolution of, I think it was 1954, when Puerto Ricans did not want statehood, and Puerto Rican farmers came into the gallery and they shot up the gallery in protest to turning Puerto Rico into a state. There's still a bullet hole in the manager's desk on the Republican side, and there's still a bullet lodged in the ceiling around the ornament of the light fixture in the ceiling of the dome of the House floor, which I pointed out to you guys. It's still lodged there all these years later. I mean, it is quite remarkable that it's nearly almost, 80 years later, it's still there. And it's part of history, man. And the only time bullets flew around in the House, it hit Republicans. And there's so much more to it, right? Like, I love taking people on the House floor and showing them like all about talking about the dais and so many other things that are just absolutely a part of the fabric of our history. Again, like you mentioned, the George Washington replica of the portrait, as he has his sword in waist, as he's leaning on it. They left the handle, but painted out the sword once they ended the era of duels on the House floor, and also the prohibition of having any weapons brought onto the House floor. Not that stopped members from bringing weapons to the House floor, but that is a true fact. They have the sword was painted out, and I think I took you guys to Abe Lincoln's desk too in Statuary Hall, where that was the first actual chamber of the chambers for Congress. So there's so many cool things about it, and I like to show everybody. I think I showed you this. As you come in through the hallway to access the chamber, there's these little doors on the floor that used to be where members of Congress, back before modern plumbing, would take their waste buckets and dispose of them. Well, I like to call that Dr. Fauci's office. So these are some of the fun things that I enjoy very much about the Capitol, and I love taking people to learn about it and share in my my humor of how I describe them. But yeah, I love history. I love my country, Mark. I love this country and everything it stands for, and I'm very proud to be an American. And with all the good, the ugly, and the bad of our history, it's made us stronger, and it's made us who we are today. And I think that's a big part of America.
Yeah, and drawing upon what you said earlier, and I mentioned this before you got on, in every presentation I give these days, at some point I say, how many people here believe that there is a political solution to our current crisis? And after giving that presentation a couple hundred times, only one hand has ever gone up, and that guy didn't understand the question. And given that environment, and where so many people are disillusioned, the people that had never voted before but came out to vote for Donald Trump because they thought he was our last true stand against the machine, that are disillusioned now. Don't mean to draw you back into politics at the conclusion here. What are your predictions for the midterms?
I'm more bullish. I do believe that we will be able to keep the House with the same slim margins. But there are things that come into question. For instance, is Representative Max Miller going to drop out after being accused of being a woman beater and domestic violence abuse, and not allow the Democrats to win that seat in Ohio? That should be a no-brainer for Republicans. Is there going to be a mutilation amongst Republicans in Florida, where they're, cutting their nose to spite their face because they really, really want to, fight amongst each other. There's a lot of issues in that delegation. And then lastly, it's going to be whether or not all the gerrymandering actually worked or pissed off people. So I think at the end of the day, we have the edge because these DSA candidates taking out, these Democrat Socialists of America's candidates taking out Dan Goldman, who is by no stretch of the definition of moderate, because he was not liberal enough, or Adriano Spallarta, who was a member of Congress for nearly 2 decades or over 2 decades in New York, and then not even allowing Nydia Velázquez, after 26 years serving in Brooklyn, to pick her successor. I think that paints a very scary picture for more normal voters out there who look at these people who hate America, who say death to America, yet they want to serve in Congress, that they have an ulterior motive. So I think we have an edge, but never underestimate Republicans for clawing defeat out of the jaws of victory. I've seen it time and time again.
Ain't that the truth? Well, I hope you're right, because I am terrified of the prospect of losing both houses of Congress and having an impotent presidency for the next 2 years, just in constant state of impeachment after impeachment after impeachment.
Yep. Like I said, and I'm putting this onus on Max Miller because, look, the majority can be defined by 1 seat. If he doesn't step down, he might end up being that 1 seat that gives the Democrats the majority, and we are left with witch hunt trials for the next 2 years. No legislating, no nothing, just impeachment, frivolous, insane hearings in Congress. It will be a disaster for the American people if Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries puts their hands on the gavel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a frightening prospect. And what perhaps the average voter doesn't understand is when you've got that 1 vote majority, you control all the investigations, you control all the committees, you control what gets on the floor for a vote, and you have absolute control over everything except the veto of the president.
Yep, exactly, and it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating. So, and again, I appreciate you having me to have these conversations, Mark. And I'm sorry we had technical difficulties.
Well, leave us on a high note. Tell us a fun story about George Santos that the average person may not know.
The average person will not know that George Santos is an absolute comedian outside of politics. I should have been a stand-up comic. I just never thought I had the courage to do it. And my macaw, my bird, she wants to chime in. You see, she's like, "You're terrible. Stop it." She's screaming at me. No, but all joking aside, I just love comedy. I love living life in this large format of take everything with levity and don't allow it to be too serious, because it's, the prospects of life is already, you're born, you go to school, you work, you pay a crap load of taxes, you maybe have some time to take a crap, but then you die. So try to put some fun in between all of that.
All right. Well, the message for the day from George Santos. Appreciate you being on the show, George. And I wish we didn't have technical difficulties, but it's good to see you smiling out there.
Thank you, sir. Great being with you, and thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to the next George Santos party.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey, Mark, I know you can't see us, but the host has rejoined us. Dave is now in the house, so we got Dave with us for the last few minutes.
I just have one question. Is today Thursday? What the hell happened? Who's he? Who's this guy?
Who is this guy?
This crazy guy. I sort of recognize him. I got scared when that bird was screaming. My goodness. It reminded me of last week at the last part of our discussion.
Well, as Christmas party, we gave George a doormat that said, "Come back with a warrant." So,
well, that's pretty good. I know you got 3 minutes here. Ooh, I could play around. Yes,
Yeah,
I
there you
listened
go.
to parts of it until my computer went down. I guess my computer did not like what you were saying sometimes, but I'm used to it, so I get it, and it's fine. We have free speech on this. On this network here, whatever I'm on, and I want everybody to hear other things, and that I believe necessarily. And we don't shut people down here unless it's really horrendous language. We want to protect the little kiddies.
Yeah, well, I try to keep it clean.
Yeah, you try, sure. Loved your little speeches about Israel. Oh, it's really, really heart-rendering there. Not Thursday. We are finally at Friday. Kathy, Sanford, Dylan. I decided to give. He pointed out how young he is, and his other buddy was young. Guess what, grandsons? I got you all beat. 70, almost 78.
Really?
Right, yeah, almost.
You
78.
don't look a day over 77.
I know. At least if you're gonna say stuff like that, make it funny. Call Santos up and get a joke. Jeez.
He's a genuinely funny guy. I mean, spending an hour with him is like spending an hour with, on the Johnny Carson show. It's just which none of your viewers are old enough to remember, but
except for
he's
me.
hysterical.
Yeah, he is funny, and he's got a great personality. And I don't know why exactly they went after him. He must have pissed somebody off there. So I think you're partially right on a lot of things, that we do have a problem, but it's always been a problem of this country, and any country. Nobody is purely Democratic and purely Republican. You have things, you read it in stories from journalists or so-called journalists, and sometimes it sounds logical, and other times it isn't, and it's meant to hurt somebody, and that needs to stop. So that's where I'm agreeing with my friend over there, and he's a good guy. Patty on today?
No, she's not. No.
Okay, so she came away injureless from last week.
Yeah,
right.
And even I wasn't on most of the time today. I kept in the George segment. I kept bleeping out. So I think the NSA didn't like my conversation with him.
Really? Oh, okay. Well, they like it with me. You always stay with me, don't you?
Yeah. No, I never have a connection problem at all with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I guess the powers that be, like you, they're not so hot on me.
Yeah, it's my pure control, being a Jew, over the United States government. Yeah, all our 15 million are up against 7.9 billion people, and that's easy for us. We want more.
Exactly.
Get off of that. Yeah, come on, we ain't that strong. This is the religion of your religion. Your religion was born as of my religion. All right, so we're gonna argue this till we die.
Yeah. Well, well, fortunately, you might have a head start on me there.
I do. I know. Actually, you're keeping me aware of the ludicrous stuff that is going on between your ears, because I think you're a smart guy. Actually, you just hide it well sometimes. Are we done? We need to close. Get off my phone. Go say hello to your, go say hello to your wife or his parrot, whatever that thing was. See ya.
Macaw.
Bye. Macaw.